The story begins with the main character running as fast as he can down the street. It was difficult to follow his movements. The guy was killed by Yuchi. He is the son of a god from the world of Leolin, and his spiritual beast was flying behind him. His name was Xiao Shan. According to tradition, everyone who has reached the age of 18 is sent to undergo various tests, such as hunting and killing aliens. The guy stopped. Seeing his opponents, he braked sharply. Xiao Shan did not have time to stop from such a sudden stop and flew straight into the back of his master. The animal screamed and told Yuchi to watch the road if he did not want him dead. Xiao Shan noticed that there were fewer aliens than he expected. Now it was his time to show his strength. Yuchi grinned slyly. He was confident in his abilities and that he could pass the tests. The guy made several mysterious gestures with his hands. They seemed to awaken magical powers. And so it was. Tongues of flame instantly rose around. This was the power of Yuchi. The guy flew into the air. There was fire around him. The flame burned brightly, towering over everything around him. At one moment, the fire engulfed Yuchi's opponents. The fire became like a large flower. The guy realized that the time had come to act. He prepared his fist and swung it at his opponents. Yuchi hit this clod of flame with all his might, and the sounds of explosions were heard. This fiery flower flew far away. It looks like the guy still defeated his rivals. Yuchi thought that since he had done the deed, he could walk around safely. He thought that now everyone would hear about him as the strongest 18-year-old guy from a family of celestials. However, the test did not end there. To complete it, Yuchi must come down to Earth and earn 1 billion in no later than 3 years. Yuchi was an extremely self-confident young man. He laughed at such a long period and thought that 3 months would be enough for him. In the mind of Yuchi, the Earth is a young and low-level world, and the people living here call people like Yuchi gods. Yuchi went to the World Bank. According to people, you can make good money here. It was a tall building. The guy, having absolutely no modesty, noted that even if they are celestials, this does not mean that they are omnipotent. However, to Yuchi's surprise, he was kicked out of the bank. Because he has no work experience and also without a diploma, he was kicked out of there. The next place where the guy went in the hope of making money was an esports club, where young people earned their living. A beautiful girl sat down next to Yuchi. She said that even if Yuchi kisses her feet later, he should not blame her for missing his chance. In the end, he didn't get along with his job there either. As a result, Yuchi became a security guard. Yuchi did not like such difficulties. He had to sit in a small booth all day long. At one point, it dawned on the guy. He remembered that they had given him an advertisement that might be useful to him. The guy reached into his pocket and pulled out a small business card with an advertisement. There was a number for a company that offered to earn money just by lying on the couch. The guy thought it was some kind of scam. However, on the other hand, if you don't try, you won't know. Yuchi didn't want to remain a loser any longer. The guy called the number provided and said that he wanted to earn a little extra money. He was told to come to the studio. Yuchi called the number indicated. He was told to come to the office in a silver dragon. They were already waiting for him there. Yuchi did just that, but to his surprise, when he arrived at the indicated place, they began to tie his hands. The middle-aged woman replied that it was for the sake of the game, and if Yuchi wants money, he needs to shut up and obey. In fact, the room was very dark and unsightly, not at all like an office. In the end, it turned out that Yuchi had been kidnapped. He was tied to a chair, with 2 men standing around him. Someone screamed. He ordered to let him go and shouted that he was in pain. Next to Yuchi stood several strong men in business suits, and on the floor lay a beaten man. One of the men called the man lying on the floor a nonentity, because he could not stand the effects of the drug. They should have tried it on the next one. It looks like Yuchi was supposed to be the next test subject. The guy didn't understand anything. Yuchi was dissatisfied and wondered why there was deception involved where there was money. He realized that men needed him for experiments. One of the men laughed. He didn't understand how the guy could fall for such an obvious scammer's hook, because only fools can respond to such advertisements. The man with a fierce look believed that Darwin had rested with people like Yuchi and nothing would help them. It was time to begin continuing the experiment. One of the men took out a syringe with the drug. The man tried to inject drugs into Yuchi's neck, but the needle broke when it hit the skin. The man was at a loss. This had never happened before. Yuchi's skin was so durable. Yuchi untied his hands. He jokingly thought that he had been bitten by a mosquito and tried to swat it. Their leader called his ward a fool, because even with such a simple task he could not cope, and snatched the syringe from him. The man waved the syringe. He wanted to do the experiment himself. However, Yuchi was not going to let the man do this. He deftly dodged the criminal's hand. Yuchi was going to do everything himself. There was ferocity in his eyes. He was ready to take revenge on them. Yuchi, with a slight movement in his hands, without straining at all, hit his offender with his fist right in the face. The man jumped away from Yuchi. He was dissatisfied with what happened, because before he still doubted whether the guy was a warrior. The man hated the warriors. At that moment, some changes began to occur to his body. The man himself was an artificial warrior. Sharp spikes began to appear from his body. His eyes sparkled red. The man flew to attack Yuchi with incredible fury, wanting him to die. However, Yuchi did not care for such an attack. With one movement of his hand, he threw the man far away. The man thought that this reagent was worthless, because even with its help it was not possible to defeat the warrior. Having defeated his rivals, Yuchi calmly rushed to the exit of the building. Yuchi left the defeated men lying on the floor, unable to even raise their heads. The guy was very angry, because of them he wasted his shadow, but today he could have gotten double pay and he would have been given a bonus for not taking time off. Yuchi opened the door of the building. He was very unhappy and thought that he was unlucky. At that moment, a young girl appeared out of nowhere and flew right above Yuchi. She had a red ribbon tied on her arm. The girl hit Yuchi directly on the head. Yuchi did not expect this and did not have time to dodge. The girl was armed with a knife. She put it to the boy's throat and told him not to move. Yuchi had an imprint of the girl's foot on his face. He was at a loss as to what was going on and where she came from. The girl's breasts were right in front of the guy's face, and he asked if she was sure of her actions. The girl was furious. She told him to shut up and only answer her questions. At that moment, the girl felt something strange. She was alarmed and realized that something was wrong. The guy's hand reached out to the girl's chest. She clearly didn't expect this. The girl immediately jumped far away from Yuchi to avoid his harassment. The girl landed. Obviously she was well physically prepared. The girl almost cried. She was amazed at the guy's impudent attitude. In addition, the girl got very angry. She flew into the air and called the guy a punk. The girl clearly wanted to strike. Yuchi explained that he didn't even think of harming the girl. Just like that she would definitely fall behind. Yuchi dodged her blows. He said that hitting girls was not in his rules, but still told her not to get carried away. The girl was very angry with Yuchi's attitude. She had no intention of letting him go. The girl knew that only scum worked in the Silver Dragon, so Yuchi would get what she deserved. She hit the guy. Yuchi was angry, because he warned her. She had infuriated the guy in vain. Yuchi asked if the girl was the assistant of the guy lying on the ground. If this is so, then the girl is a bad person. Yuchi folded his hands in front of him and began to use energy. The girl noticed that Yuchi did not have a tattoo like the other members of the Silver Dragon. The girl finally realized that Yuchi was most likely not one of them. Yuchi explained that he has no idea who the girl is talking about. He is just a security guard who was tricked into all of this. Yuchi told the girl to prepare to feel the wrath of the Son of God. The girl began to make excuses and apologize to Yuchi. Yuchi was very surprised. He did not understand what was happening and why such a change in attitude. The girl explained that she mistakenly thought that Yuchi was one of these scoundrels. And Yuchi turns out to be a warrior and knows how to use the fire spirit technique. Yuchi was not interested in staying here any longer and continuing to waste time. He was about to leave. Yuchi said goodbye to the girl. It was really time for him to return to work. The girl's name was Leolin, and at this time Yuchi was complaining that it was very difficult for him to earn money. When she was already leaving, Leolin called out to him. Yuchi asked what else she needed. Leolin asked if Yuchi needed money. The guy smiled and asked if the girl had them. Leolin asked how much the guy needed. She could help give him money as a reward. Yuchi explained that he only needed to earn a little, just 1 billion. The girl was shocked by such news. It was a huge amount, and even if Yuchi defeated the warrior, the masters from the Union would not pay him that much. Leolin blushed and said that if Yuchi does not agree, then he should say so. Yuchi remembered that Leolin mentioned a warrior. He asked if their line of work paid well. The girl was surprised that she knew nothing about them. Warriors were protectors, heroes who resisted evil. they had magical powers. Leolin explained that nature gave them the strength to fight monsters and criminal organizations for the benefit of the human race. They are admired by everyone. Yuchi stopped Leolin. He had no desire to listen to her subservience to them. He was about to ask a question. Leolin was surprised. She stopped for a moment and waited for the question. Yuchi asked if he could earn him money by being a warrior. He was already looking forward to big fees. The girl explained that they are not fighting for profit. All warriors fight for the glory of justice, and if Yuchi wants to earn money, then he will not become a competent warrior. Yuchi explained with a bored expression that he was only interested in money, nothing more. Yuchi asked how much the girl wanted to pay him for the task she was talking about. Leolin took out a bank card and handed it to Yuchi. Leolin said that she could only pay 10,000, she didn't have more with her. Yuchi agreed to this amount as well. He took the card in her hand and was about to leave with a satisfied look. Yuchi was very happy, he cried with happiness, because he received a lot of money. Leolin ran after Yuchi. She realized that the guy didn't even ask what he had to do. Yuchi grabbed the girl by the shoulder. He explained that the job as a security guard was temporary. The girl was very surprised. She seemed to understand something about her interlocutor. Leolin remembered how Yuchi fought and defeated all those bad men. The girl realized that his strength is comparable to the strength of a warrior, but he is not one and doesn't know anything about them at all. She wondered where Yuchi came from. At that moment, Leolin had an epiphany. She thought that Yuchi came from an ancient family of warriors and expressed her assumption. It was true. Yuchi explained that he was the son of the highest god. Yuchi proudly said that no matter what the task is, he can do everything. Leolin entrusted him with the task of finding the owl. First it was necessary to find his subordinate, the Sparrow. The guys headed to the karaoke club. Silver Dragon wished the guys a good evening and welcomed them there. Leolin said that the woman who deceived Yuchi is a sparrow, and those people in the warehouse are called hyenas. Yuchi was angry that he was smaller than a bug for them. The girl was no longer sure that Yuchi was adequate. The guy seemed very strange to her. At that moment, the girl noticed several important people passing through the club. She was not sure that Sparrow would be there. Something caught the guy's attention. They saw 3 people approaching not far away. One of them looked like a sparrow. Yuchi immediately remembered the girl who tied his hands behind his back. He immediately realized that it was Sparrow. Leolin grabbed his jacket as she was about to tell him something. Leolin told Yuchi to forget, because he now needs to take medicine, otherwise he will have a relapse. She said this to avert the suspicion of people passing by. Leolin was very close to Yuchi. He was very surprised. The 3 passed by. After that, Leolin explained that it was Sparrow. The Frost Snake and Fun were ahead of them, and it was impossible for the Union to find out that the guys were also investigating this matter. The guy who was walking with Sparrow turned around in surprise and was asked what it was. The guy explained that it was nothing. He thought he saw someone he knew. The girl next to him sarcastically remarked that he knew every beauty. The 3 scoundrels walked out of the club, watched by Yuchi and Leolin, trying to remain unnoticed. These 3 approached a blue sports car. They were going to get into it and leave on business. Yuchi asked what they would do. Leolin believed that it was necessary to go after them. Since all the hyenas were dead, only the sparrow had a direct connection with the owl. At this time, the 3 had already gotten into the car and were driving straight along the highway. Sparrow was sitting in the back seat. Sparrow told her to let her go, because the owl would find out about her arrest again. He had already killed many warriors, so it was better for these 2 not to dig graves. At that moment, someone was watching the movement of the car. He clearly did not have good intentions. It was a dark night outside. There was not a single living soul around. It was a man with sticks like bones sticking out of his back. They were all covered in blood, and he was hanging in the air. The red-nosed guy asked if Sparrow was talking about the chairman, who fled from him a year ago. The guys just grabbed Sparrow to attract attention and avoid the death of innocent people in the city. At that moment, someone jumped onto the hood of the car. The red-haired guy was very surprised and did not expect this. It was the same man. His face was not visible behind a mask with a long beak. He really looked like a bird. At one point the man jumped back and hung in the air again. The man jumped onto the road and blocked the car from moving. He clearly smelled of danger. The man ordered the guys to stop. He stood in front of the car with an intimidating look. In one motion, the man pulled his hand towards the guys, and something seemed to fly out of it. In fact, his hand expanded several dozen times and collided with the car, crushing it. The girl realized that it was Owl. He turned out to be stronger than the red-haired guy said. Owl explained that a year ago he had just adapted to the third regent, and now he has been vaccinated by the fourth, which is at least 10 times better than his predecessor. Indeed, it was difficult to follow his movements. In an instant he stood in front of the guys. And the next time he was already behind the guy. He stood right next to him and said that now he perceives him differently. 10 minutes later, a taxi arrived at the scene and braked sharply. Yuchi got out of the taxi, his expression as calm and indifferent as always. Yuchi looked at what was happening around. Everything was destroyed, ice blocks were sticking out of the ground, and the lantern was askew. The guys released the taxi driver, and he hurried to leave the scene. Leolin realized that Owl had come here. Yuchi noted that in this case, he completed the search task and now they are even. At that moment, the guys heard plaintive screams coming from under the car. This man asked him to help. It turns out it was Sparrow. Leolin ordered to save her, because she knows the inner kitchen of the Silver Dragon. It is impossible for her to die. Yuchi was going to save the woman, and ordered Leolin to scout out the situation around her. Yuchi smiled evilly and told the Sparrow that there was no concept of work for thank you in the world. Sparrow remembered Yuchi. She asked what the guy needed. Yuchi replied that he did not need anything special. He offered to make a deal and told her to name the cost of her life. Meanwhile, not far away, an owl was dealing with a red-haired guy and a girl. They were no longer able to fight and lay on the ground. The owl approached them and told them to choose who would die first. He was very fierce. Leolin rushed as fast as she could into the thick of things to see what happened. At some point, the girl stopped. Owl stood in front of her, and the bodies of defeated rivals lay around her. Leolin did not understand what she should do. The girl could not just stand and watch the warriors being killed, because they are always on guard for ordinary people. Leolin remembered how confident Yuchi was when the guys arrived at this place. The girl could only help the guys gain time. She hoped that Yuchi could really be relied upon. Leolin took out her knife and with a deft movement of her hand threw it at the owl. The owl dodged. He noticed some unusual sounds that were coming nearby. At one point, the knife landed on the owl's wing. It did not harm the man, but attracted his attention. Leolin ordered the owl to let the warrior go. The girl's determination was visible in her eyes. The owl paid attention to her. He looked at Leolin with a cold expression. At one point, Leolin was overcome with fear and realized that she would not have time to evade. After that, Owl's hand appeared out of nowhere and grabbed Leolin by the neck. Owl considered the girl an insignificant person who overestimated her strength. Owl was about to deal with Leolin. He raised his hand to use his powers. The owl continued to strangle the girl. Leolin struggled to escape from the clutches of the scoundrel. However, the girl did not succeed. She could no longer maintain consciousness. Her eyes slowly closed. Leolin fell to the ground unconscious, and the red-haired guy noticed her. He was very scared for the girl. The guy seemed to be still conscious. The guy found the strength to get up. He collected the remaining energy and was ready to continue fighting. He attacked the owl again. The man still skillfully repelled the attacks. Owl sarcastically remarked that the fun is just beginning. Apparently he still hasn't dealt with the wars. The red-haired guy ran to attack the owl. He was going to prevent the murder of ordinary people. However, something stopped the guy. He averted his gaze and looked to the side. Leolin was there. Her eyes were bloodshot. The girl no longer looked like herself. There was an ominous dark energy around Leolin. Something strange was happening to the girl. Spikes began to appear from Leolin's body. The girl's eyes glowed red, and blood splashed around. Leolin screamed with a terrifying roar. The girl no longer looked like herself. The warrior girl was amazed at such changes in Leolin. She did not understand what was happening. The girl noticed that Leolin was ossified like owl. She even thought that Leolin was a silver dragon monster. The red-haired guy ordered his partner to move away. He sensed danger. Even then, in the club, the guy had to remember the girl. It was she who helped the owl escape a year ago. Her strength was not inferior to the guy's. His partner understood that the situation had escalated and they needed to request help from the Union. The owl asked if they decided to run away. He quickly flew to the guys. In the place where the guys had stood before, thick smoke appeared. It enveloped everything around. When the smoke cleared, the guys were no longer there. It seemed they had managed to escape from their opponents. Meanwhile, Sparrow remembered Yuchi. She was still lying under the rubble and asked what the guy needed. The guy replied that he didn't really need anything, just to make a deal. He asked what the woman could offer in exchange for saving her. The woman explained that a year ago the Union of Warriors banned their organization, so they were forced to hide, after which they did their best to attract people to their side. Yuchi asked if the Silver Dragon Club belonged to their organization. Sparrow said that in fact, the Dragon King has not yet awakened and now they are too weak to resist the alliance. Yuchi thought about it. He was looking for benefit for himself in any situation. The guy stood up and brushed himself off. He said that now Sparrow is on her own. Sparrow asked him to wait. She was ready to tell him a valuable secret of the organization, which is connected with his companion. This information attracted Yuchi, who stopped and turned around. The woman said that one of the orphans of the orphanage was vaccinated with the 6th reagent and she survived, but even an owl would not have succeeded, and this person becomes the king of dragons. The sparrow was curious what kind of person this was, quietly from the owl, and she conducted an investigation and found out that this girl, like the owl, was a survivor. Yuchi remembered how Leolin, in their first meeting, exclaimed that only scum were working in the hidden dragon, and after that she hit the guy. Yuchi couldn't believe that Leolin was really the Dragon King. He was very surprised. Reagents not only make ordinary people stronger, but can also have side effects, such as turning a person into a bloodthirsty criminal. It is likely that when a test subject uses his power, something may go wrong with it and he ceases to be aware of himself. Sparrow explained that the Union would give the guy a reward for this information. Meanwhile, Owl walked across the battlefield and laughed loudly. He mockingly noted that the girl was rejected again. Owl taught Leolin from childhood to always fight back. Owl noticed that it seems that the information in the girl's head does not stay long. At this moment, Leolin flew to attack us with an owl. She swung and struck him. However, the owl did not even stagger from his place. The ground under his feet split into small pieces. Owl noticed that the girl had poor speed and strength was far from satisfactory. The owl was about to help Leolin awaken her true power. At that moment Leolin swung again. The girl kicked the owl, but he blocked her blow and was about to start. The owl himself struck the girl. He grabbed her leg and hit her on the knee. Leolin was in great pain. The girl disappeared. Blood gushed from her mouth. The owl began to spin Leolin's body, and he forcefully spun her around. The owl grabbed Leolin's hand and broke the girl's bones with a slight movement. Blood gushed around. Owl tried to hurt her in order to awaken her true power. Hatred is what makes Leolin stronger. Owl wanted her to give up her feelings. He said that she was abandoned and betrayed by those she trusted. He wanted Leolin to accept reality as it was and not hold back. He delivered the final blow to Leolin's stomach, and she felt incredible pain. The owl was merciless. He saw no obstacles in his path. The force of this blow sent Leolin flying far away from the owl, kicking up the asphalt in her path. Dust rose all around, and from such a distance the girl's body was not even visible. Owl knew that Leolin was the only one who had mastered the 6th agent. He was incredibly jealous of her potential. With Leolin's help, they could no longer fear the Union. Owl walked towards Leolin's body. The owl explained that he desires power and wants to awaken a power that everyone will revere, and this is not a sin. At this moment, something strange began to happen to Leolin's body. She lit up with a bright light. Leolin instantly ascended into the air, her body enveloped in a bright ball. Owl raised his hands up, as if bowing to the ball with Leolin. He called her the Queen of Dragons. Leolin's body changed, her hair became white, as did the spikes protruding from her body. Owl admired Leolin's final appearance. The Union called their organization artificially created monsters. It wants to exterminate them without a trace. Owl thought this was funny. Owl wanted Leolin to show what she was now capable of. The girl really looked powerful. The owl and the girl were going to create a world without the weak, a new world where everyone would be a warrior. This was the hidden dragon's goal. At this moment, someone's hand reached out to Leolin, but the girl did not notice it at first. It was Yuchi. He approached her from behind and called Leolin. The guy had his usual indifferent expression. The girl had already taken a fighting stance and was about to strike with a roundhouse. Leolin hit Yuchi. He moved far away, but continued to stand on his feet. As Sparrow said, Leolin has lost her mind and is not aware of who she is. The owl didn't know who the guy was or what he was doing. He was clearly angry that someone was interfering with his plans. Yuchi was already ready to use his fire technique. He threatened Owl so that he would just try to touch his source of income and he would blow his head off. Leolin was not going to let Yuchi go so easily. She ran to attack him. Yuchi grabbed Leolin's hand with which she was about to strike. It was not difficult for the guy. Yuchi abandoned Leolin. The girl flew away. He was going to teach the owl a lesson. The owl also decided to join the fight. Seeing how his subordinate was thrown, the man ran towards Yuchi. The owl did not stop mocking the warriors. He thought that Yuchi was one of them. Owl was about to use the air spikes technique. At one moment hundreds of sharp projectiles flew out of his body. These spikes rushed straight towards Yuchi. The guy remained calm and was ready to repel the attack. Leolin had already come to her senses by this time. The girl had landed and was ready to continue the fight. Leolin looked into the sky. Yuchi was there, skillfully repelling the owl's attacks. The girl was about to attack Yuchi from behind. She flew into the sky and rushed towards the guy. The girl flew towards him at great speed. Yuchi had no chance to dodge. Leolin used the technique and threw Yuchi into the ground with great force. Yuchi landed and lay in a pile of stones. The guy cleared his throat. Yuchi noticed that one was attacking from a distance in the air. The other was jumping like crazy. He realized that with such a combination it would be difficult for him. Owl was surprised that Yuchi was still alive after such an attack. He realized that the young man was not so simple. Yuchi explained to the owl that he was not a warrior, but he was right about simplicity. Now the young man was going to fight to the fullest. He prepared to attack and told the enemy to take care of himself. Not only did red flames now appear around Yuchi, but also bright purple energy. The guy was about to use the fire technique. At that moment something appeared in his hand. Yuchi created a fiery purple sword for himself. The guy held it with one hand. And Leolin was about to attack the guy again. She flew at him from behind. However, Yuchi noticed her. He turned around with a fierce look and looked at his opponent. From such a chilling gaze, Leolin even froze in the air. The girl did not know what to do. Leolin jumped away from Yuchi, realizing that she could not defeat him. The two realized that Yuchi's strength had increased several times at that moment, and now the young man would not be so easy to defeat. The owl was not going to give up. He gathered his energy and ran to the attack. Owl believed that these techniques would not help Yuchi, because his attacks in the air were very strong. However, something stopped the owl. The man did not understand what was happening to his opponent. The flames of fire even cut through the air. Yuchi confidently asked if the owl had expected this. Now it was Yuchi's turn to attack. He waved his sword in the air and the power rushed towards the owl. The blade of the sword reached the owl. It hit the man's arm and cut it off. Yuchi understood that the union would give a good reward for the owl, so he was going to save the man's life. The owl's mask split. The man sat on his knees and in front of Yuchi and told him to die. Yuchi was not going to listen to the owl and came closer. The owl gathered his strength and attacked the young man again. However, the sudden attack on Yuchi also did not work. The man did not understand why. Being in front of him, he did not even have the slightest hope of victory. Yuchi picked up the owl mask and examined it carefully. Yuchi thought that his opponent was really stubborn. Yuchi thought that the mask was quite heavy, wondering what it was made of. After this, Yuchi thought about how to return Leolin to her normal appearance. The guy thought that she was uncomfortable being in this form. Owl explained that the girl cannot accept her current power, so the force will control her and then all that remains is to wait until the force itself calms down. Leolin had no intention of returning to her previous state as flames rose around her. The owl at that moment was clearly planning something bad. He looked at Leolin with a sly look. At that moment, something strange began to happen to the girl. Everything swam in her eyes. She did not understand what was happening. Owl explained that if the guy sincerely wants to help her, then he needs to make her recognize the power. Yuchi had a plan to do this. He put on a mask with himself and used his power. Leolin screamed at that moment. She could not accept what was happening to her. Her head was pounding. A year earlier, the council was informed that the location of the shelter had been discovered and people from the Union were about to be here. The drug had already been released at that moment, and soon the reagent in the bodies of children would begin to act. One of the test subjects was Leolin. she was fast asleep under the influence of the reagent. Leolin woke up in horror, her eyes were bloodshot, and the girl felt strange. The owl's assistant was angry because they had put so much work into raising them. Sova believed that new children could be found. At that moment, someone burst into the dormitory. Apparently they were heroes. They tore the door off its hinges. The girl asked the frosty serpent what it was. These were man-made monsters, and there were many altered children in the room. The frost serpent was going to take care of them. He told Fun to find the owl and stop him from escaping. All these memories flashed through Leolin's head. She did not understand how this could happen. The girl recalled how she was still a child. At that time she sat tightly clinging to a toy bunny. The owl, smiling, extended his hand to her and invited her to walk with him. He was going to take her home. The girl considered the children from the orphanage to be a big friendly family. They even took group photos of the orphanage. The girl believed that the director took good care of her and paid attention to her. He also gave them injections once a year to keep them strong. The girl was still curious about how the kids were doing in their new families, but the director said that he didn't want to bother them. Leolin only now realized what happened to those children. They apparently did not survive all those experiments. Yuchi still stood bravely in front of the owl's body, bowed in pain. The owl laughed evilly and said that it was too late to be sad, because they had all been dead for a long time. Leolin could not believe it. She was at a loss and did not understand how this could happen. Owl said that those who could not cope with the power of the reagent suffered the same consequences. Their bodies were fried and then they died. They saw how their skin peeled off, exposing their bones and muscles. It felt like an execution. The owl said those terrible things so that Leolin would give in to hatred and feel how anger overwhelmed her. He wanted the girl to tear him to shreds. It seems that this speech had an effect on Leolin. She agreed with the place and ran towards the owl. The girl pierced the owl's body with her fist with all her strength. Blood gushed out of it. The owl achieved his goal, and finally the girl's power manifested itself in full force. Owl believed that Leolin could replace him. He was looking forward to the girl becoming the key to a new world. At this moment, Yuchi put his hand on Leolin's shoulder. He told her to go, because their task had already been completed. Leolin jumped away from Yuchi. The guy was very surprised as a girl. Leolin told Yuchi not to come. She turned away from him and ran away. Leolin looked at her hand. She was sure that she looked disgusting. Yuchi smiled warmly as he countered with Leolin and said that she looked amazing. Leolin couldn't believe it. She asked if the guy was honest with her. Yuchi repeated this again. At this moment, Leolin began to transform again. Her thorns began to disappear, and her hair became dark again. The girl realized that she had forgotten to ask the owl about the king of dragons, for whose sake the children were kidnapped. Yuchi noticed that Leolin didn't seem to remember anything. Perhaps it was because she had that power. Yuchi told her that the king of dragons does not exist at all. Because the girl killed the owl, the guy was not given the alliance reward. Leolin was not herself. The girl asked if in this case she could ask the guy something else. Leolin asked if she could ask Yuchi for something else. The guy got angry and told him not to confuse him. First the girl must pay for the owl. Yuchi wondered how much he would get for the owl. Leolin promised that this month she would pay for everything, and would also give half of her monthly earnings. Yuchi thought this was a good offer and asked what else Leolin wanted from him. Leolin said that she wants to be as strong as the warriors. She wants to join the alliance to help people. The guys left the battlefield. A bloody owl was left lying on the ground. Owl couldn't even really move. At that moment someone came up to him and considered him a disgrace. It was a girl with a tattoo on her leg. She thought that it was fortunate that sea cucumber cells were involved in his legend. Otherwise the body would have coped with so much damage. Owl noticed that the generation of internal organs is a good thing. He thanked the girl for coming to the rescue. The girl noticed that the owl was crippled by his own man, and now she even doubts whether it is worth continuing their cooperation. 10 minutes ago, Fun thought they were finally safe. The frost snake said that if they had not managed to create a thick fog, they would not have been able to escape. Fun told her partner to quickly call for reinforcements, because they couldn't let their opponent escape. Someone appeared next to the guys, but she said that there was no need for reinforcements. It was the same girl who was talking to the owl. She was a black-ranked warrior, Shahu, and said that she was making her rounds in the area. Owl explained that this was an accident and that something like this could happen. Shahu thought for a moment. She noted that neither the frost snake nor Fun knew who this uninvited guest was. Owl recalled how Yuchi told him that if he sincerely wanted to help Leolin, then he needed to force her to recognize strength. Owl said that he had already arranged everything and achieved his goal. The only thing that bothered him was where Yuchi came from and why he was with Leolin. Judging by his abilities, he is a difficult person, but even if you break him through the Union base, it seems that he simply does not exist. Shahu thought that Yuchi might be a foreigner. The girl became wary. Owl explained that biochemical transformations are carried out only in the Union and it is impossible to go unnoticed. The Union immediately sends out the warriors to completely sort it out. Shahu thought that Owl would have to find a place where he could hide, and the girl was going to find out more about this guy. Shahu looked at her watch. She noticed that it was already 11 in the evening and the girl had missed her bedtime to preserve her beauty. Shahu waved her hand and disappeared in an instant. That was her power. The owl was going to hide somewhere in an abandoned place to regain his strength and wait it out. The owl also needs more blood samples from rare animals for research. Meanwhile, at the security post where Yuchi worked, the light was on. There, Xiao Shan was sleeping in a chair. He was extremely dissatisfied that Yuchi was disappearing somewhere and did not feed his pet. Xiao Shan already thought that his master was going to sell himself, but he did not tell him about this when he left. The animal remembered that Yuchi was going to try his luck. He wanted to ask a rich woman if she needed a personal bodyguard. Xiao Shan already thought that Yuchi had gotten involved in creating a criminal group, deception and other offenses. Yuchi's father told Xiao Shan to keep an eye on his son and not let Yuchi use his power against people for the sake of making money. At that moment, the doors of the security booth opened, and the owner of the animal returned. Yuchi said that he is at home. Leolin was very surprised that the guy lived in the guardhouse. Leolin saw Yuchi's pet. She was very happy and considered him a cute pet sheep. Leolin rushed into a hug to Xiao Shan. The animal seemed to her like a sheep with a large fluffy tail. Yuchi was very surprised that the girl made such a strange analogy in relation to his pet. At one point, Xiao Shan jumped out of Leolin's tight embrace. The animal didn't really like it. Leolin screamed and asked Xiao Shan to stop and not run away. The animal began to use its powers. Leolin was very surprised to see that this little animal is not as simple as it seems and can cause danger. Xiao Shan transformed into his true form. The animal truly looked impressive. Xiao Shan called Leolin a dirty half-breed from a low spiritual world. He asked how dare she insult him. Xiao Shan was several times larger than Leolin in her true form, and the animal roared menacingly. Leolin stood right next to Xiao Shan. The girl was surprised by this attitude towards her. It turns out that this whole scene was just Xiao Shan's imagination. From the outside, all his disturbances looked like a barking chihuahua. Yuchi ordered the animal to come to him. He believed that this was a waste of energy, because the girl's spirituality was not yet fully developed to sense the animal's aura. Xiao Shan was upset that Yuchi did not tell him about this earlier, because he spent all his energy, although he only barked a couple of times. Leolin was amazed that Xiao Shan could actually talk to them, something the girl had never seen before. Leolin remembered how he swore at her and called her a dirty half-breed. Leolin was surprised to realize that it was Xiao Shan who was swearing at her, and she felt embarrassed. Yuchi tried to explain the situation. He said that Xiao Shan has an intuition for everything paranormal, so he mistook Leolin for the wrong person. Yuchi told the animal to apologize to Leolin, because the girl is their money tree. Whether the guys will be fed depends on her. The animal hastened to rectify the situation. It apologized to Leolin, and also said that the girl's affection was pleasant to him. He allowed him to stroke it as much as he wanted. Leolin was amazed at how cute Xiao Shan looked, as if she had been pierced to the heart by an arrow. The next moment, Leolin felt that she was tired, because images appeared in her head as if she had turned into a monster and killed the director. From overwork, the girl fell unconscious. There was clearly something wrong with her. Xiao Shan asked what happened to Leolin. Yuchi explained that she had run out of strength and, in general, a lot had happened that day. Yuchi picked the girl up and carried her to the security booth to rest a little. At this moment, Xiao Shan noticed something was wrong next to Yuchi. He told him to take care of himself. A second later, the ground under the young man's feet shook and split. something strange was happening. Huge spikes several meters in size began to emerge from the ground around the security booth. A moment later, a monster that looked like a huge worm crawled out of the ground. Yuchi managed to react and flew into the air, still holding Leolin in his arms. This worm-like monster was clearly aimed at the young man, its mouth moving towards him. In the paste, Yuchi noticed a broken door and also a chair. The guy realized that it had broken his security booth. Yuchi became seriously angry, and flames appeared around him. The security booth was Yuchi's home for a while, he couldn't help but repay it. The huge worm continued to wriggle in the air, the monster was not going to retreat. Yuchi, with Leolin in his arms, began to run away from the creature. After a while, Leolin gradually began to come to her senses, her vision was still blurry. Leolin finally woke up. The girl did not understand where she was. Leolin woke up in the hotel, she did not understand how she ended up here. After some time she realized that she had lost consciousness. Yuchi was sitting near the window in her room, he greeted Leolin. Xiao Shan was lying on his shoulder. Xiao Shan was fast asleep, clinging to his owner. It looks like Yuchi's pet has become whiter. Leolin was at a loss, she did not understand why Yuchi was sitting in the hotel room with her. Leolin was very embarrassed by the realization that the guy had been watching her sleep all night. She was embarrassed that they spent the night in the same room. Yuchi replied that he would not have listened to Leolin's snoring and sleepy ravings all night if his shelter had not been destroyed by the monster. The guy was only interested in money. Leolin didn't really like the guy's answer. She felt embarrassed that she was thinking in the wrong way. Leolin asked the guy if a monster had appeared in the city. She wanted to know more about it. Leolin reached for the TV remote control that was lying on her bedside table. The girl turned on the TV in hopes of learning about recent news and events. The presenter of the news program said that in the evening several monsters appeared in the city, harming people. Summer is coming, and there will be even more of them. Leolin became sad and noticed that summer was really just around the corner, which meant she needed to hurry. After that, Leolin called out to Yuchi. The guy was even surprised by such a sudden change in mood. Leolin was determined and declared that from that day forward, Yuchi would train her. Yuchi replied that you can start working at any time, but before that it is important to keep track of your income and expenses. Having come to their senses a little, the guys went out to the city center. Everywhere there were not skyscrapers. The guys approached some tall building. Yuchi was amazed at how impressive it looked. The guys came to the headquarters of the Warriors Union. It was truly the tallest building in the city center. Yuchi noticed that the headquarters is located in the very center of the city, which means they have a lot of money. The guys began to climb the high steps to go inside the building. Yuchi asked Leolin how much the guy would be paid for his exploits. Leolin did not expect such a question. The girl walked behind Yuchi on the stairs. Leolin stopped for a second, her face showing displeasure. Leolin didn't understand why Yuchi was like this. One of his 3 sentences would definitely be about money, no moral values. Leolin also remembered Yuchi's good sides when he was not so interested in money. The girl remembered the scene when Yuchi said that she looked amazing in her character. After that, a picture popped up in the girl's head from that morning, when Yuchi greeted her and sat in front of the window. Leolin tried to come to her senses. The girl shook her head and told herself not to invent too much. After all, now Yuchi's true nature is clearly visible. She considered him a money slave. Yuchi ordered Leolin to follow him. The guy already felt the money beckoning him to take it. The guys did just that. They continued up the stairs straight to the headquarters. At this moment, someone called Leolin. She was a beautiful girl. She said that they had not seen each other for a long time. Leolin was very happy to see her friend, and a wide smile instantly appeared on her face. It was Shahu. She smiled at her friend and straightened her hair. Shahu asked who was next to Leolin. She asked about Yuchi, because she had never seen the guy before. Leolin introduced Yuchi Sha and also added that the guy was very strong. Shahu smiled slyly. Bad intentions were clearly visible in her gaze. The girl said that she had not met Yuchi before. She asked if the guy was a warrior from some other city. Leolin explained that Yuchi is not a warrior, but is now working as a security guard at a supermarket parking lot. Sha thought this was curious. She asked if they were the same age or boys with Leolin. In fact, Sha thought that the guy was hiding his identity. Yuchi, looking bored, asked if Sha was so interested in him that she kept asking him. Shahu smiled sweetly and said that of course she was very interested in him. In fact, the girl had hidden intentions. The more he told her, the faster she would find out who the guy really was. Yuchi in his repertoire extended his hand to Sha and said that payment in advance. He did not want to tell anything for free. Shahu and Leolin did not expect such an answer from the guy at all. They were dumbfounded and did not know what to say. Shahu got angry. She thought that Yuchi was making fun of her, but she thought that it would be stupid to make fun of his job as a security guard, because he was most likely just pretending. Shahu asked why the guys came. Leolin replied that Yuchi wanted to know how much they would give him for defeating the owl. Shahu replied that owl, who was already dead, would not give anything for him. She apologized that she had not been able to find him, because many children had died. Leolin asked the girl not to blame herself. After all, she goes to social security institutions every month. Sha told Leolin not to be sad, because with time they will definitely become stronger, and it's time for her to go, because the frost snake and hair dryer are already waiting. Leolin stated that she wanted to join the union, if only to atone for her guilt for missing out on the director of the orphanage. Shahu explained that to join the union you only need to pass the easiest tests. Yuchi was angry that the girls were chatting for so long. He once again asked what he would get for defeating the owl. Shahu smiled slyly as she looked at Yuchi and then slowly walked towards him. The girl, looking embarrassed, leaned towards his ear and quietly whispered something to him. These words struck the young man so much that he blushed and perked up. One could guess the content of her words. Some time later, Shahu had already gone about her business, leaving the guys alone. Yuchi and Leolin were already returning from the headquarters. They walked along the stairs that were located in front of the main entrance. Leolin asked what Yuchi. Sha said. The guy was more silent than usual and clearly did not want to talk about it. It turns out that Shahu said that for defeating the owl he could get a night with her. It was these words that amazed the guy so much. However, the guy was embarrassed to voice this to Leolin, and he said that the girl didn't tell him anything like that. Yuchi asked how old Sha was. Leolin replied that she would soon turn 40, although she looked 30. Leolin noticed that Shahu was not aging at all and seemed to be taking good care of himself. Yuchi thought again about how Shahu looked. Obviously the girl was pleased with the richness. He involuntarily began to compare her with the Sparrow he had seen earlier. She seemed to him to be a rich pretender. Yuchi wondered if all the women on Earth were as determined as the ones he had been lucky enough to already meet. Leolin remembered that Yuchi had nowhere to live yet. She invited him to stay with her, because then they could study at any time. Yuchi replied that since the girl herself suggested, then the guy will not chip in for the rent and this does not need to be deducted from his training. Leolin was very angry. She called Yuchi a crazy stingy guy. As soon as the topic turned to money, the guy immediately forgot about manners. Leolin and Yuchi came to her home. As she promised, the girl opened the door to a spacious apartment. Leolin lived alone, so there was only one room. Yuchi and Shaoshan would have to sleep on the sofa in the living room. Yuchi had no problems with this, because this apartment was more spacious than the place where he lived before, the security booth. Yuchi was also temporarily unemployed. He was going to live here until he finds a new job, but this process will not be quick. Leolin awkwardly replied that she did not mind Yuchi staying here until then. Yuchi ordered Shaoshan to go out. At the same moment the earring on the guy's ear began to glow yellow. A second later, streams of light swirled around the decoration. Apparently this is where the animal was kept. And the next moment Shaoshan was already lying in the arms of his master. He complained that using his abilities independently wasted a lot of energy. Leolin petted the pet. She said that he had done a good job and if the warriors discovered him, it would be bad. However, if Yuchi joins the warriors' union, then everything will be legal and he will be able to keep the magical pet. Yuchi has already said that he is not interested in this, because Leolin had said before that if he strives for money, he will not become a good warrior. Leolin thought that in this case the guy needs to work on himself and in fact, warriors make good money. However, Leolin was not going to talk about it, because even the thought that such a person would become a warrior dishonors their bright image. Leolin had already come to terms with the fact that the guy was not interested in this. She offered to start training them. Max began his story about how everything in the world is alive, because this world was created from living energy. Yuchi began to tell this to the girl. In fact, everything had energy. Energy has many names: supernatural power, miraculous ability, and so on. It needs to be mastered. Yuchi is very good at mastering the energies associated with fire. He cultivates the 4 levels of fire. These 4 levels of fire were different colors: orange for fire, purple for flames, blue was the flame, white was the flash. These were the techniques Yuchi studied. In addition, these techniques can be combined with each other and create various other techniques. Yuchi showed off some of his girl powers. She was amazed by these techniques. Yuchi explained that the technique is a special technique that uses energy. It depends on both real power and spiritual power. Leolin understood everything. In ancient times, warrior people did not have spiritual strength, so they used martial arts. At this moment, Yuchi noticed that this was strange. Something caught his attention not far from the young man. Yuchi looked at the ceiling in Leolin's apartment. There were mysterious golden loops. At one moment something strange began to happen. Bright flashes of light appeared, everything around floated. Shahu looked at her watch a minute earlier and realized that the guys should have already come home. The girl used her magical abilities, and a glowing eye appeared in her hands. Shahu was able to spy on the guys from the ceiling with the help of that magical eye. It was part of her powers. Shahu saw Yuchi's spirit beast. She had doubts before, but now she is sure that Yuchi is a candidate sent by the headquarters for reconnaissance. The moment Yuchi looked at the ceiling, he noticed that they were being spied on, but the guy did not know who was behind it. Shahu was surprised that Yuchi discovered her stealth tracking technique so easily. Leolin asked what was on the ceiling. Yuchi replied in all seriousness that they were being followed. Yuchi turned around and noticed something wrong with his back. The guy became wary. Yuchi took off his outer jacket and noticed an eye mark on his shoulder, the same as the one Shahu had created earlier. She was put there by Shahu the last time she talked to Yuchi. She clearly had bad intentions and the guy suspected it. Yuchi wondered what the girl was up to and why she should eavesdrop on the guys. However, the guy quickly discarded these thoughts, because there was no time for this. He brushed the mark off his shoulder. Leolin came closer to Yuchi. The girl did not understand how she did not notice this mark and wanted to look at it. Yuchi explained that this is because the girl does not have the strength yet. She did not have the opportunity to notice the magic mark. Yuchi walked right up to Leolin to say something to her. He didn't want outsiders to hear their conversation. At first, the girl didn't understand why Yuchi came so close and started whispering in her ear. Leolin blushed all over. She was very embarrassed by such a gesture from the guy. Leolin immediately jumped away from Yuchi. She said that it was an accident and she didn't get so close on purpose. Yuchi stood rooted to the spot in the same place. His expression did not change at all. It seemed the guy did not understand anything. Leolin noticed that Yuchi did not react at all. He probably thought that she did this on purpose. However, Yuchi finally realized what had happened. He waved his hands and replied that it was truly an accident. The guys stood opposite each other for some time and did not know what to answer. Silence reigned in the air. Gradually the atmosphere became more and more awkward. No one dared to break the silence. Leolin asked Yuchi to teach her how to master fire energy, but such energy seemed too cruel to the girl, but still a good option. The problem was that Yuchi could not teach the girl his techniques. Leolin did not expect to hear such an answer. She asked why the guy could not do this. Yuchi replied that all people are completely different, as is their energy. Even if she has fire energy, her techniques will be different. Yuchi explained that the girl has the blood of a spiritual beast, which means she will be able to sense the energy. Leolin understood everything. She knew that in order to become a warrior, she must have a natural gift and her body must be able to perceive energy. Yuchi explained that the girl will have to open up to the energy. She needs to close her eyes and listen to the sensations. The guy said that in the endless space there was a huge door. Its size was similar to the size of a large planet. It was decorated with precious stones. If Leolin came close to her, she would be like a speck of dust compared to her. The girl needs to gather all her will into a fist and open this door, then the energy will accept her. Leolin tried to do this. She imagined around her the endless space that Yuchi had talked about. Leolin closed her eyes and tried to see that very door and do what the guy said. Yuchi knew that awakening energy was not an easy task. Compared to people from this world, sensing energy was much more difficult. The next moment, to everyone's surprise, Leolin announced that she had opened that very door. Yuchi did not expect such a turn of events and that the girl would do it so quickly. Leolin stated that it was quite simple to do. The door opened with one push. Yuchi laughed. He stated that this was expected, because a good teacher has good students. However, in the next second, Yuchi perked up and said that they needed to see what Leolin had discovered there. Further events took place in the building of the Warriors Union. It was a clear sunny day outside. Shahu was in the building and was told by phone that the person had been identified. Shahu was angry that she got this case, because she already has a lot of personal women's affairs. The girl stated that Leolin is the most important specimen to observe. She is sure that Yuchi knew about this when he followed her. Shahu thought that apparently she would have to visit Leolin again and figure everything out. Yuchi at this time continued to train Leolin. He was very surprised and stated that this could not be explained. Leolin didn't think that using energy would take so much effort. She felt as if she was sick. This was because the girl had little internal energy. Under no circumstances should she exceed her limit, otherwise she risked dying. Leolin was surprised by the words that something could not be explained. She asked what was wrong with her abilities. Yuchi said with a smug look that this was putting it mildly. Leolin was already scared. She was worried that she would not be able to become a warrior. Leolin's ability is known as the Realm of Omniscience. It is the strongest in the field of combat support and could not appear in this world. Even in the upper world, there was only one person who had such an ability, and that was Yuchi's father. Therefore, the guy had vague doubts that perhaps Leolin was his illegitimate daughter and sister Yuchi. Yuchi had heard that his father in this world had an affair with a woman, so everything worked out. Leolin stated that if she hears anything strange from Yuchi again, she will take him to a psychiatrist. At that moment, someone called the apartment. The guys looked towards the door. Leolin decided to open the door. She walked over and grabbed the handle. Opening the door, Leolin saw Shahu. The girl was delighted at this meeting and smiled. Shahu went into the apartment, where Yuchi, who was full of suspicions about her, was already waiting for her. Shahu stated that this was their third meeting with Yuchi. She clearly had bad intentions, which the girl tried to hide. Yuchi was inflamed with magical energy at the sight of Shahu. He was ready for any outcome. Shahu also did not lag behind. She herself confidently stood with her hands folded in front of the guy. Leolin was surprised by Shahu's words, because as far as she recalled, this was only the guy's second meeting. Shahu pretended that she was mistaken. The girl laughed and said that her memory was failing her, but she said so on purpose. Shahu realized that Yuchi did not tell Leolin that she used the peeping technique. Leolin just wanted to go to Sha tomorrow. The girl said that it was very fortunate that she came by herself. Shahu noticed that Leolin was worried and probably wanted to tell her something. Leolin decided to show her her new abilities that Yuchi taught her. Shahu tensed. She asked what else this was, because she had never seen anything like this before. The energy from Leolin's body spread to the entire room and illuminated it. Many eye symbols appeared in the air, just like the ones Shahu had used. The girl had a feeling as if countless eyes were looking at her, seeing right through her. Shahu was amazed to see such unusual abilities from Leolin. She did not understand what was happening. Leolin was extremely focused. She wanted to show everything she had learned. Energy continued to emanate from Leolin's body, capturing the guys around her. Leolin asked if Shahu had seen her ability. The girl was out of breath. Shahu replied that she did not see it, but felt it a little. She asked what kind of ability it was. Yuchi replied that this is the realm of all knowledge. Shahu's face changed. She did not understand how something like that could exist. The girl clearly knew about this ability. Yuchi knew everything perfectly, because he had seen this ability in his father many times. The guy replied that this ability was legendary and invincible. He looked very proud. However, there was a problem. It was the preparation level of Leolin's body. At one point, Yuchi was no longer in the place where he had previously stood. Leolin was surprised. The next moment, the girl saw only his hand, which was rapidly approaching her head. Yuchi in 1 second found himself behind Leolin. He said that this was no good and the girl did not have enough reaction speed. Yuchi explained that Leolin does not need to exaggerate. The girl drooped. Leolin began to hit Yuchi on the head, because she did not allow him to point a finger at her. Yuchi replied that he was actually speaking. Leolin was as slow as a snail. Shahu understood that the potential of this ability could not be measured. Even in the hands of an inexperienced warrior it was very strong. Shahu, as the senior examiner, officially invited Leolin to join the warriors' union. Leolin was very happy and threw herself into Shah's arms. This is exactly what the girl had been waiting for all her life. Shahu asked her not to rejoice ahead of time, because she needed to tell Leolin something else important about the exam. Shah was only one of 3 examiners. Leolin would have to pass the tests of 2 more. Shahu also advised Yuchi to try to get into the union as soon as possible, otherwise the union would soon find out about his spiritual beast. Yuchi's face changed. He asked if the girl was threatening him, because if she didn't tell, they wouldn't know. Shahu asked why to threaten her. She promised to keep his secret. The girl added that if he needs money, then he should join the union. Yuchi learned from Shahu that the reward for defeating the owl would be 3 million. Yuchi was shocked by such a sum. Shahu explained that this is still an average price. It happens that for rare ancient spiritual beasts they give a reward of 50 million. Yuchi seemed to be maddened by such exorbitant money. He jumped on Shahu in a fit of admiration. The guy grabbed the girl's leg and asked her to get him into the union. He promised to work like hell. Shahu realized that Yuchi was pretending well. The girl looked at him suspiciously. The next test would be in 3 days. She was worried that Leolin would not pass. The next one would be in 6 months. Yuchi suggested that she might not pass the nearest test just because of her frail little body. Yuchi said that this was not a problem. The guy could fix it in an instant. The guy walked up to Xiao Shan and patted him on the head. He was going to ask the beast for help. Xiao Shan just woke up. He began to use his spiritual energy and glowed with a bright light. The stream of light from the magical animal went straight to Leolin and pierced right through her. Leolin noticed that something had happened, and an indescribable energy suddenly ran through her body in a wave. Yuchi explained that the girl was possessed by Xiao Shan, and now she must become stronger and pass the exam with his help. Leolin decided to try her new powers. She resolutely stomped her foot. Leolin closed herself off. The girl looked somehow different. The guy didn't want her to experiment on her. Shahu noticed that Leolin was 5 times stronger than an ordinary person, and with her sphere of influence, she would definitely pass the exam. 3 days have passed since Leolin discovered new powers in herself with the help of Yuchi. It was at this time that the exam for joining the union began. Many candidates went to the headquarters to take it. The first stage took place on the 3rd floor, with a large elevator in front of the candidates. The physical fitness test began and the examiner blew his whistle. A large metal fist appeared out of nowhere from the wall. It was on a wire. Yuchi was the first to test his strength. He used his magical powers and swung his fist. The guy confidently hit it. The metal hand shattered into thousands of small fragments. Other candidates for joining the union were amazed at such strength. They were even afraid of the guy. After this there was a speed test. Yuchi had to run away from the cheetah as quickly as possible. The guy was incredibly fast. He ran around the training ground several times in a second. The other candidates were once again shocked by the young man's abilities. They considered them unrealistic. Yuchi successfully passed all the tests. He did not hesitate to demonstrate his amazing abilities to other candidates. The other candidates were even upset when they saw such an indestructible force. They decided that it was time for them to disperse and train some more. For Yuchi, all these tests were a piece of cake. He didn't even strain himself while going through them. At this time, Leolin was standing nearby and calmly drinking a drink. Yuchi did not understand why she was counted as passing. Yuchi quickly realized that this was all because Shahu was one of the examiners. She clearly helped the girl. Yuchi was indignant that he had to strain to pass, but Leolin got everything for nothing. The first test was over. The guys were congratulated on their successful completion. The senior examiner of the first stage of testing, Landon, came out to the guys. The man told the guys the task at this stage. They need to use any means to hold out in battle with him for 5 minutes. The candidates need to show everything they are capable of. Landon was going to first increase his speed 5 times and attack the guys. He targeted Yuchi first, and the guy put his hands in his pockets and easily avoided his attack. The next examiner aimed at the guy with glasses. He used the gigantism technique and enlarged his arm. Landon had to strike Leolin. He noticed how the girl was standing to the side. However, the moment the man was about to attack, Leolin was no longer there. Leolin dodged even before Landon attacked, but the man did not think it was just a coincidence. The exam continued. The examiner struck a blow at the plump candidate. It hit him right in the stomach. After this, the examiner flew high into the sky and thought about his next actions. In addition, next to the man there was a girl with pink hair. He had not yet had time to test her. Another candidate took something out of his pocket. It looked like a small pink ball. This pink ball has increased in size. It would look like an ominous flower. It was controlled by a girl with white ponytails, and this flower appeared from her hand. Landon landed. He found himself behind all the guys and looked at them carefully. The man noticed that all the candidates were holding up well. He decided to speed up 10 times in order to better test the guys. At one point, Landon was no longer visible, only the floor and wall collapsed around him. The man flew up to the guy who had previously used gigantism. The guy with the glasses was not taken aback. He used his technique again and struck Chongquan. Landon deftly dodged this blow. He called the guy too clumsy. The examiner hit the guy on the back with his elbow, so this candidate was eliminated from this stage of the test. However, the guy with glasses did not give up. It didn't matter to him that his speed was 10 times the speed of an ordinary person. The guy was sure that his giant arms could keep up with Landon. The guy enlarged his hand once again. He blocked the flow of magical energy from the examiner with it. The girl with 2 ponytails noticed that Landon was a mediocre examiner. The girl wanted the man to show his unique ability, so that it would be at least a little more interesting to fight with him. Landon was angered by the girl's words. He called her boorish and ordered her to answer for her words. A moment later, the girl already regretted her attitude. She was shocked by what she saw. A huge flow of energy was directed from Landon straight to the girl. Landon used a 5-fold increase in speed. His movements were impossible to follow. The girl was lying on the floor. She was beaten. Blood was flowing from her mouth. However, the girl could still fight. She stood up, laughed and noticed that something interesting had begun. The candidate used the forest killer technique, and in an instant branches appeared from under the floor and wriggled strangely. The girl noticed that Landon was very proud of his speed. She laughed loudly. The guy with glasses thought that the girl had gone crazy and decided to push the senior examiner. Landon, out of the blue, told the candidate to introduce water. The girl did not understand what the man was talking about and why he even said this in the middle of their battle. Landon continued to explain that water has no prerequisites for harming, but if you add speed to it, it will even cut through steel. The man said, "What if there was a stone instead of water?" and was clearly planning something. Landon took the stone in his hand, turned it several times and sped it up tens of times. After that, the man threw a stone directly at his opponent. He cut all the branches in his path. Landon called in the medical team to treat the wounded candidate. A girl with 2 ponytails was lying on the ground. She was completely beaten and unconscious. The plump guy was scared. He thought that they would all be killed. The girl with pink hair called the examiner a bad person. Leolin understood why Shahu told her not to underestimate Landon. She told Yuchi not to try to freeze anything. The guy with glasses asked the examiner to find out exactly how this candidate dropped out. Landon ordered to check if the girl was alive. At least she shouldn't have died with one blow, and if so, then she could be taken to the union. The guy with glasses agreed that the girl behaved inappropriately with the examiner, but he considered Landon's behavior inappropriate. Landon believed that since he was an examiner, this site was his territory, and if he didn't like something, the candidate had to fail. The guy with glasses thanked the examiner for clarifying the situation, but he could not leave. The behavior of the guy with glasses angered Landon more and more. He began to use his powers. Since the guy angered Landon, he will have to deal with a 30-fold increase in speed. The ability of the guy with glasses strengthens his hand, which can be used for both protection and defense. The examiner was going to see what the guy was capable of. The guy with glasses used his ability, but he had great difficulty following Landon's movements. The guy realized that the examiner was clearly restraining his strength, but with each of his blows there were electric discharges, which is why his hand gradually went numb. At some point, it was getting harder and harder for the guy to fight, and then Landon's fist came closer to the guy. The examiner said that it was time for the guy to take a break, but he only thanked him. Landon's attention fell on the chubby guy standing behind him. He should be next. The guy opened his mouth and was about to stuff his fist into it. It looked very strange. His ability makes him thicker, and with its help he can give the enemy a good rebuff. However, Landon was able to defeat him. The guy looked more like a corpse at the end of their fight. He was exhausted and collapsed. The next one was supposed to be a girl with pink hair. She could summon a resonant mother, releasing a powerful shock wave, but useless against the examiner's abilities. The next one was supposed to be Leolin. Landon had not yet had time to look at her skills. He asked if it caused hallucinations. The man immediately moved behind Leolin. The girl turned around and was surprised at such speed. However, to his surprise, when Landon hit Leolin, the girl was no longer in that place. The man realized that it was not a matter of illusions, because he heard the sound of the girl's steps. Landon found this ability interesting and was just about to take his words back. The man needed to become even faster in order to understand the essence of Leolin's ability. Now Leolin was already performing worse. The examiner tried to guess whether Leolin's technique was based on movements. Yuchi remembered how Shahu told him that Landel was interested in talented people, and if he found someone interesting, he would not hold back his curiosity. Yuchi understood that if this happened, Xiao Shan would not be able to maintain strength and then their secret would be revealed. The guy understood that he needed to somehow distract the examiner. He was just about to do it. Landel at that moment was flying to attack Leolin. He was already ready to strike her in order to unravel the secret of her abilities. However, at that second, Yuchi appeared right in front of the man, who was also about to strike. Yuchi's fist met Landel's fist, their forces clashing in battle. Landel told Yuchi lastly, since he is the strongest person present, that this is the first time that someone has arbitrarily decided to attack the examiner. The man understood that their strength and blows were similar. Now he would gradually reduce the speed limits to test the guy. Landel told Yuchi not to disappoint him. He began to strike the guy. At that moment, Yuchi shouted and stopped the man. He wanted to do something to him. Landel asked if Yuchi needed time to set his ability into motion. Yuchi did not answer, but the man agreed to give the guy 1 minute. He hoped that would be enough. A minute later, Landel was in full combat readiness and was about to test Yuchi. Yuchi grinned slyly. He himself said that time was up. This was the guy's plan. The guy with glasses realized that Yuchi was not only strong, but also smart. The fact that Yuchi arbitrarily attacked the organizer is disrespectful. It was not clear to the guy why Yuchi did this, probably because of the girl. The guy with glasses realized that Yuchi was deliberately stalling for time, because at the very beginning they were told that they only needed to hold out for 5 minutes. The guy with glasses realized that if Yuchi had not intervened, Leolin would also have failed the exam. Yuchi's cunning techniques angered Landel even more. He clenched his fist and was about to use his power. The man's time was almost running out. He had only a second left to defeat the guy. At that moment, as the man approached Yuchi, a magic wand appeared out of nowhere and spun in the air. The magic wand landed between Yuchi and Landel, firmly embedded in the ground. At that moment, a man in a colorful magician's costume appeared and congratulated the guys on completing the task. The magician was the second examiner, a warrior of black rank, whose name was Voodoo. Voodoo stated that the examiner must set the right example by following the rules. Landel said that he was always sticking his nose into things that weren't his own. Landel nevertheless came to terms with what had happened. He left the guys at Voodoo and left the hall. Leolin became embarrassed and thanked Yuchi for helping her out. Yuchi said that he simply couldn't bear to stand on the sidelines, and he didn't care about the girl. Leolin was angry, because the guy doesn't even think of stopping disgusting her with such words. Voodoo asked the guys not to think badly of Landel, because he has a good heart, but his work forces him to be like that. Voodoo understood that it was hard for the guys to believe this, but he was going to explain everything. Summer is the time when you can most often encounter spirit beasts. The Union is currently short of personnel. That's why even newcomers who have not yet had time to adapt and who have just passed their exams are sent into battle. This is why Landel is so strict. He wants to weed out those who could die during such missions. The guy with glasses realized that he was wrong to think badly about him. He realized that that girl with ponytails easily died on the mission, because animals do not know mercy. Voodoo announced that the next stage of the exam, the second in a row, was beginning. Voodoo told the boys to look up and pointed his finger at the ceiling. There was a large screen right above the examiner. The guy with glasses and the girl with pink hair understood what it meant. The task was that the guys were in the role of a locomotive driver and they would have to choose to run over 1 or 5 people. The guy with glasses tensed. He understood that in this task any outcome is terrible and leads to the death of people. At that moment, one of the guys raised his hand in the air and declared that he knew the answer to the problem. It was a girl with pink hair. She believed that it was better to save 5 by sacrificing the life of 1. However, the task was not easy. Voodoo smiled and asked if the girl was confident in her answer. Leolin understood that no matter what you choose, you will still become a killer, especially human lives that are priceless. All the guys were thinking about the solution. Meanwhile there was a visual representation of the problem on the screen. The guy with glasses understood that this question was clearly a tricky one and he needed to think carefully. Another guy wanted to give up the choice. He could blindfold himself and let fate decide who should die. The guy with glasses asked what Yuchi thought, since he was the only one who didn't express his guess. Yuchi thought for a moment, and then was ready to voice his answer. Yuchi would bet on a miracle. The guy smiled confidently. Voodoo did not expect such an answer. He asked what the guy meant. Yuchi asked why the guys thought that in this situation there are only 2 ways out. With their skills they can even stop the train. Voodoo laughed. He had clearly never heard such a bold assumption before. Would really liked Yuchi's answer, but he won't count such a loophole as a solution to the problem. Voodoo pointed his gloves at the guys. They must answer which way they will direct the train. Yuchi was already starting to get angry. He didn't like where the examiner was going with this. Voodoo asked in all seriousness, because this was one of their tests. Leolin believed that whatever they chose would be unfair to each party. Voodoo said that if the guys find it difficult to make a decision, then they can transfer the right of choice to someone else and take the place of the one they choose. Voodoo began to use his abilities. He turned around several times and said that the question is to be or not to be. Voodoo thought that the guys needed to be pushed to a decision. He was going to do it. At that moment, thanks to the examiner's abilities, an ancient clock appeared in the air. The hands pointed to almost 12 o'clock. The dial itself was shrouded in voodoo energy. Voodoo said that the clock is ticking and the guys need to hurry up with their choice. Leolin clenched her teeth. She didn't know what to answer and was confused. The girl asked to be allowed to choose from the game. She was determined. The guy with glasses explained that if you do this, the examiner can turn everything against the guys. They need to understand the secret of the task. Leolin understood that at the first stage their strength was assessed. She wondered what they wanted to evaluate at this stage. It seems that the girl realized the secret of this task. She smiled because she had come up with something. Yuchi wanted to voice her decision, but she still had time. Yuchi, to everyone's surprise, pointed his finger at Leolin and declared that he was choosing to leave her. Voodoo, sitting on the clock, showed a finger up and said that this answer was accepted. The examiner explained that the right to choose also works in the opposite direction. However, if the guys choose him for elimination, then all the guys will leave the game. All the guys were amazed by such an unexpected statement. They did not fully understand what was happening. All eyes turned to the young man. They tried to unravel the secret of the problem. The guy with glasses realized that everyone has the right to choose and, fearing for their own skin, they can eliminate the other. Another guy added that the one who is elected by the majority will be eliminated. He thought that things would not turn out well for him. However, it was difficult to say exactly the meaning of the test, because it is not clear what the examiner's goal is. Voodoo asked if it was difficult for the guys. He said that they just need to choose and not chatter. Leolin got angry. She didn't like this exam and the examiner himself. The girl refused to choose, even if this decision would mean being kicked out of the test. Voodoo replied that if the girl wanted it that much, then that's exactly what would happen soon. However, Yuchi intervened in their dialogue and ordered them to end their games. Yuchi realized that the point of the mission was not to save as many people as possible in order to make them become suspicious of each other, and the real goal is to test their insight. Voodoo asked why Yuchi thought that this was the true purpose of the exam. Yuchi understood that 2 points were important in the exam, testing the guys and staying within the given time. Judging by the first stage of the test, each examiner has 5 minutes and they need to assess their capabilities during this time. The guy realized that in order to prevent the guys from understanding the examiner's true motive, he deliberately allowed the fate of the guys to be decided instead of the fate of people. If they do not figure out the voodoo trick, then they will act according to their conscience and each will refuse to harm others, in which case they will not pass. In addition, there was still something left unsolved, the meaning of the clock. They appeared just when Yuchi was supposed to respond, in order to quickly force them to make a decision. Yuchi understood that voodoo himself must follow the rules, which means whether a person passed or not, he can decide only after the end of the test. Voodoo laughed. This was the correct answer and Yuchi figured out the meaning of his task. The guy had just managed to see what was hidden behind the difficulties that the examiner had set for them. Voodoo stated that all the other guys except Yuchi would be expelled, since they didn't figure it out before. The chubby guy was in shock, because his dreams of becoming a warrior were destroyed. Voodoo was actually joking, he kept the image of a magician. The man stated that he was eliminated due to the game or the one who chose the other without hesitation. And also the one who refused the choice. Voodoo made a serious expression. It was Leolin. After all, a person who sympathizes with everyone cannot become a warrior. Voodoo solemnly waved his robe and congratulated those who advanced to the next stage. Voodoo used his magic, he disappeared in an instant and said goodbye to the guys. The guy with glasses was glad that it was finally over, he liked the first stage of testing more. Leolin turned her attention to Yuchi, who was standing nearby. He was all drooping. Yuchi thought, if as a warrior he was faced with such a situation, what would he do? The guy with glasses understood that voodoo chose those who could overcome the burden of conscience. And if one day the guy with glasses was faced with such a situation and he had to choose, he was not sure of his decision. The guy with glasses asked if the third stage of the exam had started, but it had not started yet. The plump guy said that the examiner had not yet appeared, but quite a lot of time had already passed. The chubby guy began to use his ability, he put his fist in his mouth. His ability, as before, helped the guy swell and increase in volume. This was the perfect moment for the chubby guy to regain his inner strength by filling himself with gas. Yuchi couldn't figure out what size this guy really was, skinny or chubby. The guy asked to call him by his nickname, which he himself came up with, a fat shield. It spoke for itself. The guy with glasses noticed that the guys were in the same boat today and a fair amount of time had passed, and they still didn't recognize each other's names. In general, it is customary for soldiers to take nicknames for themselves, and the guys must come up with their own. This will be an incentive to pass the tests. The girl with pink hair raised her hand and shouted that she had already come up with a nickname for herself. The girl confidently stated that she should be called the Queen of Destruction. She imagined herself sitting on a throne of skulls and looked nothing like her current self. At this inconsistency, Yuchi laughed loudly. He stated that the nickname did not really suit the girl, she was more like a servant of the queen. Leolin hit Yuchi on the head and told him to consider other people's feelings and not make fun of them. The girl with pink hair was offended, cried and called Yuchi disgusting. She was upset by his words. Leolin ran up to the girl and tried to calm her down, because a queen is not fit to cry. The guy with glasses asked to call him baboon, because his hand is what makes him different from others. Leolin stated that she did not have the ability yet, so she did not come up with a nickname, she asked to be called by her name. Yuchi stated that he is the son of God, or the guys can call him by his real name. The guy with glasses thought that such a nickname for a guy might be considered ostentatious. At that moment, something strange began to happen in the exam hall. Stones flew around. At that moment, the siren began to howl, the threat was clearly close. The guys realized that the third stage of their exam had just begun, everyone was wary. The Union building is considered the safest place, so it is unlikely that this was an outside invasion. At that moment, hands made of sand began to emerge from the ground. Hands grabbed each other, reaching straight towards the guys. Following the hands, the body of the monster began to emerge. It was huge and also consisted of sand. The monsters finally showed a face, they had bright red eyes and a huge mouth. There was a female figure sitting on one of the monsters, it was difficult to see who it really was. This was Shahu, she was the third and final examiner. The guys need to destroy the Sand Guardians in 10 minutes. At this moment, Yuchi began to use his powers, he created a flame. Yuchi's fire drilled a hole in the sand monster's chest, the flames passed right through. A huge hole was left in the monster's body, and the guy's fire engulfed everything around him. The guy thought that one blow would be enough for him to deal with this giant. However, everything was not so simple. Shahu grinned and considered Yuchi to be a naive boy. Leolin noticed with horror that these sand monsters were recovering. Indeed, the gift on the chest of the Sand Guardian was rapidly overgrown with sand, as if he was regenerating. The sand giant turned his attention to Yuchi, who was standing behind him. The monster was about to strike at the young man, but he avoided it by jumping high into the air. The sand monster was controlled by Shahu. She was angry that she couldn't hit Yuchi. Shahu wanted Yuchi to show how strong he was by sarcastically calling him the Union's young talent. The girl wanted to assess the true power of Yuchi in order to understand who she was dealing with. Earlier, after the first stage of the exam, Shahu asked Landel how he was feeling after the clash with the guy. She wondered if he was okay after the examiner met Yuchi's fists. Landel asked if Shahu knew him, since the guy barely met the requirements of the Union. Shahu was surprised by this answer, because the man clearly looked shabby. Shahu noticed that Landel's hand did not agree with him. It was very damaged and was shaking all over. The man believed that it was all his carelessness, and if voodoo had not interrupted them, he would have taught him a lesson. Shahu said that she had information that Yuchi had sent them from headquarters to check how they were performing their duties. Shah thought that they wanted to bend them, and Landel needed to listen to the words of the general staff. Landel does not care about the feuds of the elite, he only fulfilled his duties as a warrior. Shahu slowly walked to the exit of the room. She said that she was very sorry. Shahu believed that the man turned a blind eye to the situation and did not need to stand up for justice. He asked if this was the opinion of the top. Shahu asked what Landel said. She was surprised by his words. Shahu laughed loudly. This was her personal opinion about the situation with Landel. Landel believed that this did not concern him. He was not going to interfere. At this time, the battle between Yuchi and the sand giants continued. The guy was going to use the fire technique on the giant, Purple Flame. Shahu was surprised that the guy decided not to be modest and use other techniques. Yuchi was very surprised when he was unable to strike. He was distracted by something. The guy didn't have time to see how there was a monster's huge fist near his face on that side. Shahu was surprised that Yuchi could not dodge. Apparently the girl overestimated him. A huge fist slammed Yuchi into the floor, causing cracks to appear. Yuchi forgot that each examiner acts in his own style. He noticed that Shahu behaves completely differently and simply destroying the monsters is not an option. Yuchi realized that he needed to show his best side and find out the purpose of this stage. Leolin was worried about Yuchi and asked if he was okay. Yuchi began to put on a performance. He said that it was hard for him alone and his strength was leaving him. Yuchi was going to take a break and ask the other guys to figure it out, but he himself had other plans. Shahu stood on the sand monster's shoulder and looked down on the participants with a confident look. The baboon knew that the Sand Guardian had the ability to quickly regenerate. He wanted to know if he had a limit to recovery. Leolin understood everything. She proposed to split up and attack in different places and thus find out the weak points. The baboon believed that this was a good plan. It was time to implement it. The guys teamed up and decided to demonstrate their teamwork skills in exterminating the Sand Guardian. Shah was already impatient to see what the guys were going to do. She reminded them about the time limit. Shahu planned for the Guardian to defeat Yuchi. Apparently Landon was mistaken in the guy's simplicity. The girl knew that Yuchi liked to be the center of attention. He would not sit on the sidelines like that. The baboon used the Chongquan gigantism technique and struck with a huge fist. The guy's blow hit the Sand Guardian in the leg. The giant drew attention to this. Fat Shield was the next to fly into battle, using the living bullet technique. And finally, the Queen of Destruction decided to finish off the enemy. She used the destructive shaking technique. The guy's multiple techniques were aimed at different parts of the Sand Guardian's body. Leolin thought that this was bad, because she had no attacking technique, and the monster wouldn't even feel her normal strength. However, the girl cast aside these thoughts. She pulled herself together and was ready to do everything in her power. Leolin, like the rest of the guys, flew to attack the Sand Guardian in order to contribute to teamwork. The girl swung her fist at the monster and hit the Guardian's body with all her might. However, her blow was of no use, because Leolin did not use the technique. To everyone's surprise, the keeper fell to the ground. The guys stopped and looked at what would happen next. The Sand Guardian seemed to have been defeated by numerous blows from the guys. The fat shield asked if everything was that simple. It seemed suspicious to him. The baboon thought that something was wrong here. He understood that the test was not over. The guy sat down. He had a guess. He noticed that the sand began to move on its own to heal the guardian's wounds. The baboon sat down and took a pile of sand from the keeper in his hand, trying to understand what awaits them next. The guy noticed that the entire surface in the exam area consisted of earth. Leolin realized that as long as there is earth, the sand guardian will regenerate, which means he is invincible here. The Queen of Devastation asked if the guys needed to make sure that it did not come into contact with the ground. The baboon praised the girl, because this was the correct answer. This is the easiest way to defeat him. However, none of the 5 participants had the ability to levitate. The Queen of Ruin stuck her tongue out at the baboon from her scrunched-up face. The guys were confused. They didn't know what to do because time was running out. Yuchi considered all the guys to be narrow-minded, because if they do not overcome the monster, then they need to leave this matter. Leolin suggested that perhaps the key to solving the riddle is in time, and perhaps the Sand Guardian is weakening every minute. The baboon thought this was not a stupid assumption. He decided that he needed to try everything. The guy told the guys not to give up until the last minute. They all got ready and prepared their superpowers. 7 minutes of the boys' battle against the Sand Guardian passed. The participants were all out of breath. Their strength was running out. They had already tried everything. The corpulent shield asked how many times the Sand Guardian had already regenerated, and whether he could do this indefinitely. The baboon replied that he had regenerated 11 times, which was no easy task. However, each time after restoration, the Guardian decreases, but becomes even stronger. And besides, the giant became more agile and stronger. Perhaps he has no limit to regeneration. Meanwhile, Leolin was about to enter the battle. She asked to be allowed to try. The girl believed that her ability could be useful against his current state. Leolin used the omniscient sphere technique and glowing eyes appeared around her. Her energy covered the entire battlefield. Her eyes increased in size. Leolin's sphere of omniscience also affected the Sand Guardian. Leolin shouted to the baboon to take care of himself, because the Sand Guardian was aiming at him. However, the man could not dodge. Then Leolin came to his aid and helped him avoid the blow. However, the Sand Guardian did not stop. He looked at the baboon with an enraged look. The man was surprised by the speed of the giant, because he was nearby at that moment, and he didn't even notice it. The Sand Guardian targeted the Queen of Ruin next. The fat shield was going to take care of the girl. He covered her before hitting her with his large body. However, the Sand Guardian was very fast. He swung and was ready to hit the fat shield. The baboon noticed this. He was going to prevent this and used the gigantism technique. The man's hands instantly expanded and he blocked the blow of the Sand Guardian, thereby saving his friends. Baboon was glad that Leolin was on their side, otherwise they would not be doing well. The man felt that it was necessary for Yuchi to join them as soon as possible. Baboon always believed in Yuchi, although he never said so before. Yuchi believed that now the forces of the allies and the enemy were balanced. The guy was still thinking about time and their abilities. After a short time, Yuchi finally figured out the essence of the riddle. He smiled. Yuchi used the fire technique on the Sand Guardian. He directed his hand at him, in which he concentrated his strength. Yuchi imposingly snapped his fingers to activate a special move. Yuchi used hellfire. Everything around him flew into the air, and fire engulfed everyone around him. The guys were surprised by what they saw. It was as if the Sand Keeper began to pay. However, everything was not so simple. The baboon realized that under the influence of fire, sand does not melt, but is modified. In an instant, the Sand Guardian had a super strong body and could already be called a Stone Guardian. The fat shield immediately panicked. He thought that the guys were done for and their enemy was definitely not going to be defeated now. The baboon was not going to give up so easily. The man flew into the attack. The baboon believed that this was not the end. He used his ability and hit the enemy's body. However, the man did not expect this. His striking technique had absolutely no effect on the guardians. After the baboon's blow, not even a crack remained on his extremely durable body. The Stone Keeper wasn't going to wait either. He swung his hand and hit the guy. The baboon flew to the side from this powerful blow, and blood gushed from his mouth. The man flew into the ground with great speed. Stones scattered around him. At first it was not even clear what condition the baboon was in now. dust rose around. The baboon could not believe that there really was nothing more that could be done with this enemy. In an instant, the fat shield thought that he wanted to give up after seeing how the baboon was defeated. Leolin panicked. She believed that Yuchi did not do this on purpose and he did not know that this would happen. However, soon the girl also drooped. She was no longer sure that there was another way out of their predicament. Yuchi asked why the guys were so downcast. He explained that he knew very well that this would happen. Yuchi explained that after the first round of the exam, the second began immediately, and the third began only an hour later. Yuchi remembered how Shahu told that the guys needed to destroy their guardian in 10 minutes. Yuchi considered this a hint. The guy guessed that the duration of the round itself was not 10 minutes, but an hour. Despite the new information, the fat shield did not understand how the guys should deal with such a situation and what to do now. Yuchi said that this stage is designed to test their strength and unity. Everyone must contribute to victory. Yuchi already had a plan of action. He told everyone to listen to him and follow his instructions. Yuchi ordered Leolin to distract the stone guardian so that the fat shield could attack unnoticed. Yuchi ordered the baboon to throw the fat shield at the stone guardian with his own strength. The baboon hurried to do this. He grabbed his partner by the leg and spun him around. At one moment, the fat shield was already flying at the stone guardian at great speed. The stone keeper turned around in surprise. He did not expect this to happen. However, the giant's reaction was excellent. He managed to swing at the guy. The stone giant hit the corpulent shield in the stomach with his huge fist. However, the guy was not going to give up. He grabbed the stone guardian's hand. The fat shield knew that its opponent was strong, but the guys attacked from the blind spot. Now it was the Queen of Destruction's turn to attack. The girl jumped out from behind the guy. She hid behind the fat man, despite the fact that the guardian is fast, but even he will not be able to react instantly. Yuchi understood perfectly well that sand would not be able to penetrate the stone shell, which means it would not regenerate. Their exam was watched on the TV screen. Voodoo clapped his hands. He was impressed by the guy's actions. Voodoo noticed that the guys acted as a single unit, completely trusting their commander. Voodoo smiled slyly. He liked Yuchi more and more. His leadership qualities were at their best. Half a month had passed since the exam. Yuchi and the fat shield were walking in the park. Yuchi believed that he had proven himself better than others, and now he would be sent to an area where he could prove himself to the fullest. However, everything was not as the guy expected. Yuchi screamed at the top of his voice. He was very angry that he ended up in such a quiet area. Yuchi was sent to the mountain district on the outskirts of the city, far from the thick of things. Meanwhile, in the city, the warriors were fighting in full force. Yuchi understood that something was happening in the city every day, but in the area controlled by the guys it was suspiciously calm. It was all Shahu's tricks. She said that this area was suitable for Yuchi's level. The girl wanted to annoy the guy. She said that this is a C-rank area, suitable for beginners like Yuchi. The fat shield told Yuchi not to complain, because there is nothing to do, and they still pay for a salary of 10,000. 10,000 for Yuchi is a drop in the ocean. He needs bonuses and it would be nice to kill a couple of Emperor-level monsters. Emperor-level monsters were the strongest. They could destroy an entire city, and even the Union would not risk just going against them. In addition, Yuchi was listed on the white list and therefore can only complete tasks from it. Yuchi was still dissatisfied with his situation and decided to call Sha via video call. Yuchi dialed the girl. She was clearly in the thick of things. A fire could be seen behind her. Shahu noticed that everything was calm in the Yuchi area, but she had good news. Monsters appeared in many areas. She believed that it would be difficult to deal with them. Yuchi stated that he wanted to change the patrol area. Shahu explained that this could only be done in a year. However, Yuchi did not intend to be upset for long. He asked if Leolin was busy. Leolin was indeed busy. A beetle appeared in her area, a longhorned beetle, one of the monsters. The girl believed that the three of them could handle it, and Shahu was looking after them from the side. Yuchi wanted to ask if the girl wanted to change areas, but she had no time to talk and passed out. Yuchi was angry that Leolin hung up the phone and didn't even listen to him. Yuchi was angry that he borrowed Leolin from Xiao Shan and she dared to switch off. In the area of Yuchi and the fat shield, everything was calm. It was a sunny day outside. The fat shield was enjoying another day of idleness as they slowly walked through the area. The guy bought one video game. He invited Yuchi to play it. It was an operation to seize a girls' school. The disc depicted 3 cute schoolgirls. Yuchi immediately understood the content of this game. He was in a stupor. Yuchi became even more angry. He was not going to sit here idly in this boring area. Yuchi took off and ran towards the city. The fat shield did not understand where he was running. Yuchi was going to kill all the monsters and force the Union to admit that sending him here was a big mistake. Although there were fierce battles in the city, in the distant reflections of the area, people led a measured life. A photo shoot of a beautiful girl took place on the beach. She posed on a hammock. The civilians were calm and confident that the Warriors' Union would solve any problem. Meanwhile, Leolin and her partners were fighting in the city. The girl took her phone. She looked at her warrior rating. Glory points were added for her services in slaying monsters. Leolin wondered how many of these points Yuchi had. Meanwhile, the enemy continued to attack the guys. The battle was in full swing. Leolin was determined to defeat the monster and had no intention of stopping. Civilians also suffered from such a fierce battle. They asked for help. One of the warriors asked to send help to the 5th district. He was all beaten up. The guys fought with a huge white orangutan. He was a monster of an ordinary level. Meanwhile, a bright flash flashed past the orangutan. The monster did not have time to react. This flash hit the orangutan directly in the face. He flew far away. Someone's strength defeated the monster without much difficulty. He could no longer get up from the ground. Mole and Sting were white rank warriors who were fighting the monster. They didn't notice what had just passed. This incredible force killed the orangutan in a second. The guys were in a stupor. Meanwhile, nearby in the city, huge spikes began to appear out of nowhere. Behind them, a creature's head appeared in the boys' field of vision. It was a winged boa constrictor, an emperor-level monster. It looked like a huge snake. Frost Snakes and Feg also fought against her. They need to join forces to defeat a monster of this level. Feg noticed that if the houses had not limited his movement, they would have had a much more difficult time. A second later, the same bright flash as before flashed past the monster and killed it. Feg realized that judging by the strength of the fiery flash, this must be a warrior of the black rank. The Frost Serpent understood that the monster was killed with one blow. Only 2 people are capable of this, but they usually don't do this kind of thing. In fact, that bright flash that killed the monsters was Yuchi. He was going to kill them all. Yuchi kept waiting for the strongest monster to appear. He moved at the speed of light through the streets of the city. Meanwhile, peaceful life reigned on the beach. A girl's photo shoot was taking place, when suddenly the photographer noticed something on the horizon. In the sea, the fins of some creature appeared in the camera lens. A megalodon, a monster of the level of earthly demons, emerged from the water in an instant. The huge shark began to suck everything nearby into its huge mouth. Residents knew that it was this monster that plunged their city into chaos 5 years ago. It was better for them to run away quickly. While Yuchi was patrolling the streets of the city, his phone rang in his pocket. The guy braked sharply so that he lifted the asphalt to see what came on the phone. UCH received a message that a megalodon of the level of earthly demons had appeared in the 16th region. The Union asked for help from the warriors. Yuchi was interested in this message, especially since it was about the level of earthly demons. The guy knew that the Union had divided the city into 30 districts. He was already thinking where the 16th was located. Yuchi quickly realized that this area was in the seaside part. He looked in that direction. The message also stated that the megalodon was attacked by a huge squid. The Union requested the help of black rank warriors. Yuchi put the phone in his pocket. He thought that a worthy opponent had finally appeared. Yuchi rushed towards the seaside area. He should arrive there first. Yuchi finally reached the battlefield. He looked at his opponent and was surprised by his size. The squid was very ominous. He believed that life teaches people nothing and they still continue to exterminate sea inhabitants and pollute the water. The squid was the ruler of the seas. He was going to make people pay with their lives for the suffering of the sea inhabitants. However, at that moment the huge squid noticed something strange nearby. The monster turned its attention to Yuchi, who was standing right on the water next to him. Yuchi, using his magical power, could not drown, which surprised the monster. The guy turned around and looked at the sea squid with a terrifying look. Yuchi asked the squid to repeat what he just said. This attitude angered the Lord of the Seas, and he began to wield his tentacles. However, Yuchi was not so simple. He mocked the squid, believing that it was in a hurry to become sushi. Yuchi was already ready to use his magical power to quickly deal with the enemy. Yuchi raised his hand and directed all his energy directly at the sea squid. However, the next moment the guy slowed down a little. His beam of light destroyed only part of the monster. The mosquito screamed that it hurt. He was going to use magical power. At that same second, a creature emerged from the water that looked like a huge shark made of water. And the next moment there were already more than 10 such sharks. They were all aimed at Yuchi. All these water sharks were controlled by a squid, and he directed them towards the young man. The water creatures instantly rushed straight towards Yuchi, and water flashed all around. Yuchi dived under the water. He was about to use his fire technique. However, his technique did not work underwater. He needed to hurry up and come up with something. Yuchi considered that apparently he would have to give out many times more fire. The guy used the flame technique. He was going to boil the entire sea around. Yuchi used the fire pillar technique and a circle of flames appeared around him. The spectacle was impressive. Yuchi created circles of fire in which he imprisoned the squid. The guy understood that the position, when there was solid water all around, was unprofitable for him, but it would not in the least prevent the guy from winning. Yuchi said it was time for barbecue and snapped his fingers. At the same second, a loud explosion was heard, as well as inaudible screams of the squid. It looks like the squid really started to fry. The monster was screaming terribly. However, the sea monster was not going to just give up. It repeatedly told Yuchi to die. However, Yuchi was confident in his abilities and that the creature's techniques would not overtake him. Yuchi was in the air. He was already impatient to deal with his opponent. At this moment, Yuchi prepared to use his powers once again, and lightning from fire flashed around him. The squid's cry deafened the guy. He told him not to scream like that. Yuchi ordered the squid to close its mouth. He could no longer listen to these screams. The squid was not so easy to defeat. Despite all the efforts of the guy, he was still alive. However, Yuchi did not retreat. He stubbornly finished off the sea squid. Blood poured out of his mouth. The sea monster really tensed up. At this rate, Yuchi had every chance of frying his opponent. The squid tried to threaten the guy. He asked how a vile person dares to harm him. Yuchi was already tired of the squid constantly opening its disgusting mouth and considered him very ill-mannered. The squid believed that Yuchi definitely needed to be killed. He doubted that even his most powerful blow would break the guy. In addition, the Yuchi squid's column of energy will not penetrate any of its water techniques. The squid recognized that Yuchi was the strongest of the opponents. The squid was about to flee and hide from the battlefield. The water monster stated that Yuchi could not stop him. He stated that life was more important to him. Yuchi was not happy with the squid's departure. He took his fire sword in his hand. Yuchi promised the squid that he would kill it, which means that's what he was going to do. Squid believed that the guy thought a lot about himself. He created a tornado with his blood and Yuchi's fire would turn into steam. The squid enveloped itself in streams of water and said goodbye to Yuchi. Yuchi looked attentively at what was happening. He was ready to engage in battle with his opponent at any moment. Meanwhile, the squid slowly sank into the water. Only its tentacles were visible. Yuchi was covered in a purple glow. He did not expect that his opponent would be afraid. The guy was already ready to use his techniques. He prepared for battle. However, to my surprise, I saw that the squid had actually disappeared into the depths of the sea. It seemed that the enemy had already been defeated. The guy turned around and looked at the city. He only had to defeat the megalodon. The guy immediately rushed towards the beach. It was difficult to follow his movements. Meanwhile, strange things were happening underwater. A purple glow appeared. It seems that Yuchi has already defeated the squid. Its body floated to the surface after some time. The people in the city were very frightened by the invasion of monsters. They all fled from the beach in horror. Megalodon had already penetrated into the city itself. It was like a tsunami with a huge shark. The water gradually filled all the streets of the city, demolishing all the buildings in its path. The residents were terrified. They tried to save their lives, but did not know where to run. There was no safe place left in the city. The water destroyed all houses and buildings. However, the warriors also did not sit idly by. They were in a hurry to help people and defeat the enemy. Meanwhile, a young guy with a long spear jumped out from over the horizon. Apparently he was a warrior. The guy planted a spear in the water. The warrior guy used his magical powers, and the water immediately parted. The guy's next goal was the megalodon itself. He was determined to stop it. The warrior flew into the air and rushed towards the enemy, but he tried to attack him. The guy skillfully repelled all attacks with his spear. He destroyed water streams. At one point, the guy looked at his opponent with a decisive and cold look, with full confidence that he would defeat him. The warrior used the celestial spear technique. He swung it and pierced the enemy with it. A huge explosion appeared right in front of the warrior. Everyone hoped that he managed to win. However, everything was not so simple. Doubts appeared on the guy's face. Meanwhile, a helicopter was flying over the city, filming news programs. This warrior who fought the megalodon was Mulinchen, a young genius and the favorite of 1 billion women. The news presenter announced that with one blow the guy defeated the megalodon that was destroying their city. However, it seemed that this was not the end of the battle. A thick fog appeared around the guy. A bright purple glow appeared right from the center of the fog, blinding Mulinchen. The warrior realized with horror that his enemy might still be alive. The news presenter asked the pilot to rise higher, but he could not do it, because they were being pulled in. The news anchor was angry with the pilot. She asked if the man wanted her, the best TV presenter, to die in the belly of a shark. Mulinchen made a mistake. He didn't think that it was more difficult to use power in the air. The guy realized that he couldn't count on a helicopter either. He had to come up with something. Mulinchen climbed through the air, stepping on rocks falling from above. The guy thus wanted to get closer to Megalodon in order to defeat him. Getting closer, Mulinchen used the deadly sunfall technique and stabbed his spear into him. At this moment, Megalodon declared that if the guy fell into his mouth, covered from the inside with a sticky secretion, then he would not be strong enough to get out. Meanwhile, someone patted the Megalodon on the back. It was another warrior. The huge shark was surprised that someone dared to disrupt its plans. The Megalodon turned around, and she was overcome by a strange, overwhelming sense of danger, similar to what the creature had on humans. In fact, Yuchi came to defeat the Megalodon. He called the shark in a terrifying voice. Yuchi asked if the Megalodon was chatting. There was no emotion on his face. Yuchi prepared to use his power. He concentrated all the energy in his hand. Yuchi swung at the water monster with all his cruelty and ordered him to die. The guy instantly dealt a powerful blow to the Megalodon, and a bright flash appeared around him. The creature doubled over in pain, screamed loudly and prepared for its death. The battle did not end there. There was also a bright flash of light that came from the spear. Mulinchen also rushed to join the battle. He thrust his spear into the shark's body. Blood gushed from the shark's wound, so the warrior was going to finish it off. Mulinchen triumphantly took the spear out of the body of the defeated creature. He felt like a winner. Mulinchen stood on the body of the dead Megalodon so that everyone could see it. The news presenter noticed the guy. She believed that Mulinchen dealt with the Megalodon on his own, saving the entire city. The girl's name was Maya. She received many messages about Mulinchen and asked him to give an interview. Mulinchen only gave the girl an icy look. He believed that this was not necessary. The guy turned around. He already had to go about his business. Although he is considered the strongest man, he is also nicknamed the Ice Mountain for his talent to ignite women's interest. Maya was already head over heels in love with the guy. She literally stood and drooled over him. There were survivors not far from the battle site. Journalists were going to interview them. However, Maya changed her mind. She believed that reporting should be done by those who have no guts. The girl was going to see where else the monsters were nearby. She opened the application. Yuchi saw a message that the wave of monsters had been cleared. The Union thanked for their efforts to protect civilians. Yuchi was glad that he was done. Now he had something else to do. Yuchi remembered that now he can go and earn his money. Yuchi came to the headquarters of the Warriors Union. A huge coat of arms hung on its building. Leolin and her partners also came here. The girl did not expect that everything would be settled so quickly. She was very proud of their work. The guys already wanted to quickly become like the one who finds himself in different parts of the city and deals with monsters. At this moment, Leolin noticed Yuchi walking ahead of them to the Union headquarters. Leolin called the guy and asked what he was doing here. The guy replied that he came for a reward. He alone killed all the monsters and the squid and Megalodon. The baboon already thought that being in nature had driven Yuchi crazy. Leolin scratched her head. she was about to tell Yuchi some unpleasant news. Leolin thought that the guy had messed something up, and she showed him the phone with the news. Yuchi thought that an article had already been published praising his exploits, and he looked at his phone. However, nothing like this was written in the news. He was amazed. Leolin was angry with Yuchi. She told him to first do his homework and understand the basic rules before appropriating the merits of others. Yuchi absolutely did not understand what rules we were talking about. Leolin became even more angry, because this was all told during the warriors' classes. However, Yuchi simply slept during all the classes. They were completely uninteresting to him. Yuchi believed that to become a warrior, you just need to kill monsters. He did not know about other conditions. Leolin has already said that people like Yuchi are the scum of the warrior world who do not have an ounce of consciousness. The baboon smiled. He was touched by the quarrels of the guys. The Queen of Destruction sat on his shoulders. Before you start killing monsters, you need to accept the task, and if it has not been made public, you need to take a photo of the monster. To avoid a situation where one warrior takes risks for the sake of glory, warriors of different levels can accept corresponding tasks. It turns out that now Yuchi can only claim monsters of the usual level, but if he kills a stronger one, no one will admit it. Based on its safety concerns, the union requires strict compliance with the rules. Yuchi was very angry because of such stupid rules because there were no monsters in the designated area at all. Yuchi shouted that it was all in vain and he would not be able to return. The baboon did not understand what the guy was talking about and where he had to return. Yuchi explained that his parents were from another world and were sent here to earn 1 billion in a year. The guys were shocked that his parents were from another world. They did not expect this. The baboon and the Queen of Ruin laughed at Yuchi's words. They thought he was joking. The baboon grabbed Leolin's shoulder as a friendly gesture. The baboon thought that Leolin had a keen eye, because Yuchi was strong and smart and also joked well. Leolin was amazed by her partner's words, and the girl became flushed. Leolin started waving her hands and saying that she didn't like Yuchi at all and didn't need to ship them. Meanwhile, the image of Yuchi again appeared in the girl's memory, saying that her image suited her very well. Leolin became embarrassed and said that no girl would look at someone like Yuchi and no one would fall in love with him. Meanwhile, Yuchi was thinking about something completely different. He became inspired and declared that he had decided everything. The guys absolutely did not understand what we were talking about. They were already ready for Yuchi's strange proposal. Yuchi, to everyone's surprise, smiled and sweetly extended his hand to Leolin. The girl didn't understand what Yuchi was up to, because he didn't say a word but extended his hand. Leolin was embarrassed. She thought Yuchi was stupid, because the baboon and the queen were looking at them. However, at that second, Yuchi, with an icy expression, demanded that Leolin pay what she owed. The girl never expected such words from Yuchi, because she was thinking about something completely different. Yuchi began to list everything that the girl had to pay for. He was going to calculate how much interest had already accrued. Leolin was very angry, because Yuchi only thinks about money. She could not contain her emotions. Leolin swung at Yuchi and kicked the guy. She screamed and told him to die. Meanwhile, Yuchi went to the bank to check his balance. He went to the ATM. The guy looked at the balance on her account. It was 76,400. Yuchi was not at all happy about this amount. He became sad, sighed and mentally calculated how much he still had left. Suddenly, loud footsteps were heard near Yuchi, and the sound of metal was also heard. A tall and muscular man entered the bank building and opened the door. It was an Earth-level warrior, 2 Yuan. The man had long golden hair and looked impressive. 2 Yuan walked to the ATM that was located next to Yuchi and was also going to look at his account. The man reached into his pocket. Yuchi looked at it in surprise. 2 Yuan took out some metal thing from his pocket. It consisted of 2 types of metal. It turns out it was an Earth-level warrior badge, with Earth written on it. Now 2 Yuan needed to enter a password. The ATM asked that outsiders could not see it. At this time, Yuchi was peeping from the side. He just wanted to know how much a warrior of this level earns. Apparently Yuchi found out this. He went outside from the bank, where his friends were waiting for him. Leolin noticed that Yuchi looked somewhat gloomy. She already thought that he had given the wrong account for the transfer. Yuchi explained that this was not the case at all. He asked if the girl knew how much money the Earth-level warrior had on his card. Yuchi even burst into tears. As he saw it, his heart stabbed, because the thought that he would not be able to take money for tasks of this level caused suffering. The baboon asked the guy not to rush, because everyone started somewhere and then became stronger. The queen also stated that she would become stronger and would be able to earn a lot. The baboon said that he too would achieve success, because his predictions always come true. The man put his hand on the guy's shoulder and asked him not to take it into his head. He offered to go and celebrate the completion of the task. The queen was very happy, while Yuchi still looked downcast. The guys came to a small restaurant. They all sat down at a table. Leolin asked why they were sitting this way, because guys should sit on one side and girls on the other. There were also warriors at the next table. Sting admired the fact that Yuan was able to defeat the six-eyed squid. Yuchi overheard the conversation at the next table. He was surprised by what he heard. Yuchi looked at the next table. He realized that this was the man he met at the bank. Sting asked Yuan to tell him exactly how he killed the squid. Yuan agreed to tell his friends everything, but first he was going to go to the toilet. The man stood up from the table and walked towards the door of the men's room. He slammed it loudly. Yuan panicked, because he had no answer to this question, because he had not defeated the enemy. The man tried to come to his senses. He turned on the tap and washed himself. As soon as Yuan imagined the corpse of this monster, he already had a shiver throughout his body. He was afraid of it. At that moment, Yuchi came into the toilet and asked if the man had collected the reward for killing the squid. Yuan didn't understand who he was talking to. The man turned around and asked if the guy had anything to say. Yuchi replied that he had nothing to say. He just wanted to be given a reward for killing the squid. Yuan smiled mockingly. He thought it was some kind of joke. However, Yuchi explained that he was the one who cut the squid into pieces. The man realized that judging by Yuchi's words and his arrogant appearance, he was serious. Yuan understood that Yuchi was a white-ranked warrior and his strength would not be enough to kill the squid. Yuchi knew that the man would not confess, so he would have to force a confession out of him. Yuan laughed when he saw Yuchi begin to use his powers. He was confident of his victory. The man asked if the guy understood who he was talking to, because he was an earthly-level warrior. Yuchi told the warrior to call you whatever he wanted, but Yuchi was going to take the reward at stake. Yuan asked if Yuchi was trying to provoke him. He began to threaten him and said that he would not expect mercy. The man began to use his magical powers. He all lit up with a pink glow. Yuchi stated that he liked this arrangement. He just wanted to assess the strength of a person of his level. However, Yuan stopped their battle. The man remembered something. He stated that it is forbidden to fight here, because they can harm civilians. They need to agree on the location of the battle. However, Yuchi had already sent a request to the Union that there was an Earth-level monster here, so everyone was evacuated. Yuan understood that the Union would fine him for such misinformation. He understood that Yuchi was determined. Yuan was already ready to start fighting. He activated his powers and flew into battle. The man's strength was truly great. It instantly enveloped the entire room. However, Yuchi was serious. He raised his sword and said that greed leads to misfortune. Yuan felt a strong overwhelming feeling. He was no longer sure that Yuchi belonged to the white rank. Yuchi raised his sword upward, and the guy's strength began to radiate from it. Yuan screamed in horror and asked Yuchi to stop. Yuchi was angry that the man was constantly stopping him. He asked what was wrong again. Yuan stated that he had vision problems and could not look at a bright light such as that from a sword. The man took his glasses out of his inner pocket and asked to give him a minute. It turns out these were not ordinary glasses. They could test spiritual powers. He pointed them at Yuchi. At first, the number above Yuchi's head was 278. However, after a moment it gradually increased, becoming 611. And after some time, the scale reached 999. And the final number was infinity. The scale turned red. Yuchi's strength was maximum. The glasses showed a message around Yuchi that he was extremely dangerous. Yuan became wary. The man even thought that the guy could be an emperor-level monster in human form. All the man's instincts told him that he needed to run. He broke out in a cold sweat. A moment later, Yuan turned his back to Yuchi and rushed towards the door. The man smashed the wall, hoping to escape from Yuchi and save himself. However, when he went outside, the man stopped. He had nowhere to run. Yuan's face changed in an instant. showing horror. He realized that the street was full of people, and if Yuchi came out here and told everyone the truth, his life would collapse. Tu Yuan understood that he needed to confess everything in order to save his life. Yuchi was already following him, he was holding his magic sword in his hands. Tu Yuan couldn't think of anything better than to enter the previous building again. However, he realized that nothing good would come of this. He stopped right in front of the guy and was ready to admit his mistake. Tu Yuan apologized to Yuchi for stealing his reward and gave the guy his million. Yuchi asked why Tu Yuan didn't confess earlier, but is only doing so now. The man also wanted to ask Yuchi not to tell anyone what happened. Yuchi said that he would not tell anything and asked why the man took credit for other people's achievements. Tu Yuan said that this is a long story, but since Yuchi himself asked about it, otherwise he will tell it. Since childhood, Tu Yuan was a frail social phobe who excelled in studies, for which he was oppressed. Tu Yuan felt embarrassed that he was being praised in front of the whole class for his academic achievements. Because of this, his classmates, hooligans, looked at him askance. One of them constantly bullied the guy. His school life was clearly not good. Meanwhile, Tu Yuan had a vivid memory of one of his school's physical education classes. Then the boy did not follow him and sat completely alone in the class and studied. At that moment, someone threw a ball at Tu Yuan. It hit the boy directly in the head. One of the bullies approached him. He made fun of the boy because he didn't even go to physical education. In fact, he, a loner, always wanted to join other guys. It was this desire that gave him the determination to become a warrior, because this way he could make friends. After undergoing a special training program, his body became stronger, but during the military inspection he was eliminated. Tu Yuan couldn't stay, but he couldn't change the union's decision either, so he cheated. Having discovered the monster's corpse, he made a video as if he was killing it, and thanks to this he was awarded the title. Because of this, everyone began to respect the man and greeted him with a smile, but every day he lives in fear. Yuchi asked if Tu Yuan was afraid that he would tell this story to many others. Tu Yuan didn't know why, but after he told the guy the secret, his fear receded. Perhaps it was because Tu Yuan never stopped being lonely in his heart. Yuchi laughed loudly. He didn't expect that Tu Yuan was a human. Surprise. The man even became embarrassed. He told Yuchi not to judge others by their appearance. On this day, Tu Yuan finally got rid of the heavy knife and he would no longer have to pretend. True, he doesn't know how long it will take until he can get rid of his current image and become his old self. Yuchi agreed with Tu Yuan. The guy extended his hand to the man. Tu Yuan did not expect such a gesture from Yuchi. He was a little surprised and asked what it meant. Yuchi said that since the man trusted him with his secret, now they are friends, in return he will tell his secret. Yuchi introduced himself and said that he came from another world, the highest deity of which was his father. Tu Yuan was very happy and sold everything. He considered it a great honor to be a friend of His Highness. Yuchi was very surprised by these words. The guy had never been called that before. Yuchi asked why the man was acting like a fanatic. Yuan explained that Yuchi is the son of a deity, not like they are mere mortals. Yuchi asked if the man thought he was lying, since he was the first person to not take his words as a joke. Tu Yuan explained that they are friends, which means they should trust each other 100%. At first, Yuchi had other plans for the man, but it seems that being friends with him is more profitable. Yuchi asked how Tu Yuan found that squid. It was unlikely that it was just walking by. The man's secret was his glasses. He took them off his face. Tu Yuan invited Yuchi to try on these glasses and then he would understand how exactly he found the squid. Yuchi was very surprised. He did not expect that these were not ordinary glasses. Yuchi, as Tu Yuan said, put the glasses on himself. He was wondering what it was. Yuchi saw through the lenses the test of spiritual power that the people complained about on the scale. Tu Yuan took them to help see the strength of the enemy's spirit, and to determine whether he was weaker or stronger than him. Yuchi was amazed by these glasses. He thought that it was no wonder that the man started running after putting them on. Yuchi asked what this inscription was. It said a test of spiritual something. Tu Yuan himself came up with the concept of testing spiritual pressure. The stronger a person's spirit, the more pressure aura emanates from him. Regarding the numbers, he made an approximate calculation based on the data of the Union warriors and compared it with the levels of the monsters. Yuchi asked how many points he had. he was wondering how strong he himself was. Tu Yuan didn't know this, since heavenly-level warriors are extremely rare. In every district of the city there is a detector. When a Tianshan-level monster is detected, a man was heading to that point, and perhaps he will be able to find the corpse after the battle. Yuchi finally understood why Yuan thought that the squid was killed by another monster. However, everything was not so simple. Tu Yuan had some more reasoning. Yuchi was surprised by this answer. He took off his glasses and was going to listen to the man. Tu Yuan explained that the wounds showed that they were inflicted by a person, but since no one applied for the reward, he thought that they both died. The man did not know that this was the work of Yuchi. He still considered it a low action. Tu Yuan clenched his fist. He really felt guilty for what he had done. The man explained that he was at a dead end and there was no way to do otherwise, because the more merit he achieves, the more he moves away from Mu Lingchen. Mu Lingchen was already doubting whether he had been demoted. Yuan needed to prove himself at least once. Yuchi thought about Mu Lingchen's name. It seemed to him that he had heard this name somewhere before. Yuchi asked how Yuan recognized him, because he had just joined the union and had not accomplished a single feat. Yuchi asked if the man remembered his unusual appearance. Yuan remembered each newcomer so that in the future he could fool them and become friends, and then skip his responsibilities. Yuan immediately began to say that this does not apply to Yuchi, because he is a real monster. Yuchi explained that the union rules were to blame, otherwise who would want to remain in the white rank. In fact, the rules were invented after Yuan tricked himself into becoming a warrior 5 years ago, after which others began to pull off this scheme. Yuchi became confused. He didn't even think that Yuan was the culprit. He asked why he didn't say this before. Yuchi ordered Yuan from now on to transfer his tasks to him. He will be able to cope with them. This way the man can continue to pretend, and Yuchi will receive money. Everything is in the black. However, Yuan has already decided to confess to the entire alliance, so apparently this is not the best idea. However, Yuchi put his hand on Yuan's shoulder and said that they were friends, which means they should help each other. In addition, Yuan said that friends need to be trusted. Yuchi said that by doing this they would fulfill their duty and protect them from civilians and would not cause any harm. Tu Yuan agreed under the pressure of Yuchi. He had no choice but to say yes. Yuchi stretched out and was glad to do it, because he had complete benefits and no disadvantages waiting for him. Yuan thought about it. Yuchi's proposal really sounded reasonable and now he has no need to confess to the alliance. At that moment, their conversation was interrupted by a man who entered unnoticed and asked what they needed to confess. Yuan was already nervous. He didn't expect that anyone would be able to hear their conversation and secrets. The silhouette of a man appeared in the hole in the wall. He was clearly a warrior. It was Mu Lingchen who received information that a monster had been discovered in this place. Mu Lingchen explained that disinformation is prohibited and for such a thing, not only will you be expelled from the union, but you will also receive a fine. Yuan was about to stand up for his new friend. He told Mu Lingchen to get lost. Mu Lingchen asked if Yuchi Yuan was shielding him. In other words, it was very beneficial to keep the guy with him. Yuchi was scared when he heard words that he could be expelled from the Warriors' Union.